In the shadows of a clandestine base, Slytherin Cord prepares his trap. For 7 long months, he has waited for his target, ready to unleash thousands of soldiers to secure his ultimate vengeance. Deep in the frost-covered woods, the march to war begins. Despite the biting cold and the gathering storm, the loyal forces press forward, ready to face the death that awaits them in the thorny unknown. The forest becomes a killing field. As the decoy team draws the enemy's fire, a secondary strike force expertly silences the hidden archers, clearing a path through the dense, bare-branched trees. At the threshold of the enemy's heart, the masked commander arrives. With a lethal grace, he navigates the poisonous garden, knowing that the finale of his long-awaited game is finally at hand. The battle shifts into the claustrophobic depths of the earth. Splitting his forces, the commander leads a desperate push toward the estate, facing an onslaught of arrows that shatter against their reinforced iron shields. The air thickens with lethal projectiles. Both armies collide in a chaotic dance of steel and death, as the invaders slowly grind their way toward the massive, isolated estate. Slytherin Cord waits, teeth chattering with anticipation, expecting his long-hunted prey. But as the figure approaches, his delight turns to cold, murderous confusion. The mask is wrong. The gate is wrong. Slytherin realizes with mounting fury that the man walking toward him is an impostor, a mere pawn in a game he thought he was winning. Taunting his frustrated adversary, the impostor plays the role of a condescending subordinate. Slytherin's temper snaps, his long-prepared trap turning into a personal confrontation of ego and steel. The table turns. With a wave of a hand, the hidden spies within the estate reveal themselves. The hunter becomes the hunted, surrounded by thousands who were once his own guard. The dance begins. Swords clash with rhythmic brutality, and the smell of blood fills the air. Slytherin fights with the ferocity of a trapped animal, refusing to accept his inevitable downfall. He is no longer a commander. He is a punching bag. The soldiers beat him with cold, calculated cruelty, reducing the once proud aristocrat into a whimpering, broken wreck. The soldiers show no mercy, for they look upon the broken form of Mona and see the reflection of their own rage. Every punch delivered to Slytherin is a debt paid for her suffering. As the battle concludes, Death observes the carnage from the sidelines. The estate is secured, the prisoners are bound, and the true mastermind waits for the final act to unfold. Back in the heart of Baymard, the king gathers his council. With the threat of spies finally managed, he sets his sights on the future, restructuring his military into elite special units. The air in the room turns heavy as classified envelopes are distributed. These documents hold the secrets of national security, and the leaders understand the weight of the task assigned to them. Excitement and obsession drive the leaders back to their duties. They depart with the zeal of men who hold the fate of a nation in their hands, their eyes fixed on the work ahead. With the strategy settled, the king turns his attention to his heart. He approaches the school, eager to whisk Princess Lucy away for their long-awaited moment of peace. A sudden emergency shifts their plans. 12 massive boggles have washed ashore, and Princess Lucy, ever the caretaker, insists on saving these majestic, injured creatures of the sea. As the whales return to the ocean, the king's joy is interrupted by a piercing warning from the system. A life is in danger, a death that could unravel the entire world. Warped across the land, the king arrives in a far-off village just as an arrow flies toward the heart of King Sirius. With a flick of his wrist, he catches the projectile midair. Dismissing the enemy's confusion, the man in black challenges them all. He fights with the casual ease of a man bored, his movements turning bone-cracking strikes into a lethal art form. The kings of old watch in disbelief. They came to this land seeking refuge, but they have found a savior whose martial prowess defies all logic and reason. The battle ends as quickly as it began. With a smirk, the savior reveals himself to be none other than the king of Baymard, leaving the royal refugees in a state of utter shock. With the mission a success, the king returns to his empire to witness the birth of a new era. The motion picture studios are abuzz, ready to capture the legends of the world on camera. Lights, camera, action. The dream begins as the first scene is recorded, marking the dawn of Baymard's entertainment industry and a future filled with wonder and stories yet told. In the wake of a brutal tragedy, Carrie finds herself physically broken and shattered in spirit. Her mother, desperate for answers, seeks to uncover the source of the agony that has left her daughter crippled and full of cold, calculating hate. Blind rage consumes the pair. In a cruel twist of fate, the innocent Queen Penelope is named as the culprit, a target for a crime she never committed, while the true architect of this misery remains hidden in the shadows. Landon watches from afar as the pieces fall into place. His monitors flicker with the digital ghosts of Sirius and a star, his unwilling pawns in a much grander game of diplomacy and destiny. Landon bridges the gap between science and tradition. In the hospital's auditorium, he prepares to finalize the training that will bring vision to the blind and clarity to the Empire, marking the end of a long, arduous curriculum. With meticulous care, Landon demonstrates the art of prescription. Each test is a step toward a mission completed, as he ensures his staff is ready to serve the masses come Monday morning. The storm has passed, leaving a pristine, frozen world in its wake. Sirius and a star prepare to journey into the heart of Baymard, their resolve as cold and sharp as the winter morning air. They reach the gates of the magical empire, only to find the impossible. Roads clear of snow and structures that defy their understanding greet them, shattering their worldviews one by one. Even heroes have their vices. A star, captivated by the exquisite food, refuses to leave the port, forcing Sirius to play the part of the long-suffering elder brother to move their journey forward. The wonders of modern technology break their minds entirely. From self-flushing latrines to the disembodied voice of a radio, the duo is plunged into a technological paradise that feels like sorcery. The overload of innovation proves too much. In a desperate attempt to bring his brother back to reality, a star resorts to physical force, only to leave them both bewildered by the strange new world. The trap is set. Landon maneuvers the board, orchestrating a meeting that will bridge long-lost siblings and secure his hard-won mission objectives. The door opens, and history pivots. The sudden appearance of Raoul triggers a reunion that transcends borders, bringing together family that was thought lost in the chaos of war. Tears replace questions as a father finally finds his kin. Landon watches from the side, satisfied as the pieces of his mission fall perfectly into place, reuniting the broken dynasty in the warmth of the palace. But in the shadows of the world, malice thrives. In the name of a twisted god, innocent lives are broken, and the cycle of suffering continues far from the reach of Baymard's light. Back at the seat of power, Landon tackles the mundane struggles of a growing nation. Congestion is the enemy, and he introduces the radical idea of fast food to fuel the engine of his empire. Ambition arrives by sea. Sky Williams, a prince of Vanida, sails toward Corona with a heart full of lust and a mind full of conquest, targeting Queen Penelope as his next prize. A pact is forged in secret. Sirius and a star commit to a future of alliance, binding their fates to Baymard's vision, unaware of the storms gathering on the distant horizon. Vengeance finds its outlet in the dark. The captured Slytherin faces the man he hunted, only to discover that the prey has become the predator in a game of blood and truth. The mask falls. The truth of the lineage is revealed, turning the hunter into the hunted, as the rightful heir claims his due through the silence of the dungeon walls. Mercy is a luxury he cannot afford. William dismantles his enemy piece by piece, a testament to the price of crossing the ones who anchor his existence. The war machine awakens. Landon prepares his arsenal, designing iron beasts and timed destruction to ensure his empire stands unshaken in the coming storm. Technology meets joy. The advent of the camera turns life into art, capturing the smiles of a nation that finally sees its own image reflected back with clarity and grace. A picture is 1,000 words, and for these women it is a treasure. They gaze at themselves, stunned by the detail that only yesterday was a dream, feeling the weight of the new age on their shoulders. In the north, shadows lengthen. Nopline, a tyrant consumed by his own arrogance and bad luck, lashes out as his plans crumble and the reports of failure pile up on his desk. He fears the heavens are against him, but he refuses to bow. Nopline prepares for a final gamble, unaware that the seeds of his downfall have already been planted in the silent, strategic chambers of Baymard. From the shadows of war to the brightness of progress, the world is changing. With allies secured, secrets silenced, and technology blooming, Landon stands ready to face whatever darkness dares to challenge his vision. The empire of Tariq was a place governed by the whims of tyrants. Nopline, a man desperate to silence the rumors of his curse, clutched a letter he believed would change his fate, a message from the shadowy operative Hemru. The laughter of a man who believes he has finally secured a winning hand. Nopline was convinced that fortune had turned, ignorant of the fact that the web he was spinning was woven by an unseen master. Landon Barn, a man transmigrated from another world, looked upon his foe through the lens of a system that defied all logic. He was the architect of Nopline's downfall, carefully pulling strings to lead the tyrant toward his doom. Beyond the war, there was progress. Landon had successfully eradicated a plague that had haunted the region for decades. The streets of Ngum were alive again, a testament to his knowledge and resolve. Kamara, a woman whose beauty and cunning were a deadly cocktail, entered the hall to remind her brother of the dark theater they were about to perform for the public. The stage was set for a public deception. The death of a king was to be unveiled, and the rise of a new puppet was to be celebrated in the name of political dominance. A silent hall filled with dread. The sight of black mourning attire sent a shiver through the nobles of Tariq. They were all witnesses to a tragedy or perhaps a farce. Lecter, a boy unfit for the weight of a crown, struggled with the script of power. He was nothing more than an instrument, a tool being shaped by his mother's iron will. With a stuttering voice that belied his arrogance, the new king made his proclamation. The old king was dead, and the era of the tyrant began with a hollow promise of fun. The hall transformed into a cage. Resistance was met with the cold steel of blades, forcing the prideful nobles to kneel before the boy who claimed their future. Blood stained the golden floors as the nobles bowed to the new order. The cruelty was palpable, a testament to the iron grip Kamara and Nopline intended to hold over Tariq. Miles away, Landon watched the chaos unfold. He knew that their cruelty would eventually become their ruin. But for now, he had to build, to expand, and to prepare for the inevitable clash. The dream was taking physical form. The Baymardian Institute of Science and Engineering stood as a beacon of progress, a sanctuary for minds that would shape the world to come. Landon and his trusted aide, Tim, walked through the corridors of the future. Every room was a promise of technology, efficiency, and strength that would soon dwarf any ancient kingdom. Even the cold could be tamed. The resort was ready to welcome guests into domes that mirrored the stars. It was a new era, one where even the harsh winter served the prosperity of the empire. A notification, a command, a new mission. The system pushed him toward the north, toward a hidden destiny that required his immediate intervention. In the dark corners of Arcadina, other vultures were circling. Barn, the prince of deception, had discovered the location of the man he hated most, and he hungered for the kill. Barn, driven by jealousy and a warped sense of superiority, was preparing his own trap. He wanted to claim Baymard for himself, blind to the true power that lay within its walls. Behind the iron gates of Baymard's high-tech prison, the air was thick with the scent of violence and the desperation of men who had everything to lose. Warden Mitchin, a man whose mere presence could freeze the breath in one's lungs, patrolled his domain. To the inmates, he was not just a jailer, but a nightmare given form. A display of raw, overwhelming strength. With a single strike, the warden shattered their spirit, silencing the brawling room and ensuring that every inmate knew who held the power. Despite the terror, the desire for freedom burned hot. Tybalt and his gang were counting seconds, waiting for the lights to dim so they could gamble their lives for a chance at escape. Midnight, the silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic heartbeat of desperate men. They moved like shadows, guided by the precision of a thief who had mapped the guards' very movements. But the prison was a living beast. Sensors triggered traps that defied the laws of logic, transforming the simple hallway into a labyrinth of shifting floors and disappearing paths. The dream of freedom died in the mist of a sleeping gas. They had traversed hallways that never ended and traps that never slept. They were caught in a trap of their own making, trapped within the unbreakable walls of Baymard. Landon Barn, the visionary leader of Baymard, had transmigrated into this world and transformed a desolate land into a beacon of progress. Reincarnated from his former life, he now held the fate of his people in his hands. Today, he reviewed reports of a failed prison break, his mind already calculating the security upgrades needed for his burgeoning empire. With the prison matter contained, Landon turned his attention to the growth of his resort city. His goal was to provide leisure and adventure to his citizens, transforming wild, dangerous forests into controlled, breathtaking parklands that combined modern comfort with the untamed beauty of nature. Inside the Ministry of Tourism, ideas flourished under Landon's guidance. He planned to create an enclosed, sprawling wilderness park, a sanctuary where citizens could experience the thrill of the wild without the lethal dangers that once haunted the outskirts of their lands. Focus shifted to the military manufacturing sector, where the backbone of his upcoming rescue mission was taking shape. Landon inspected a fleet of armored, all-terrain transport trucks designed to endure the harsh winter conditions of the north. These were not merely trucks, they were mobile havens. Landon had integrated life-saving medical bays and compact sleeping pods to ensure the comfort of soldiers and those they intended to rescue, proving that compassion and strategy could travel hand in hand. With 40 trucks ready for departure, the mission was set. Landon ensured every logistical detail, from mobile kitchens to clinical bays, was perfect. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, especially with his estranged father, Alec, already on the move. While Landon prepared his forces, a different kind of ambition drifted toward Corona. Prince Sky Williams arrived, blinded by arrogance and convinced that his presence and his cheap glass trinkets would make the locals swoon at his feet. Sky expected awe and subservience, but found only the frantic energy of a thriving trade hub. The locals were too busy with the rigorous demands of Baymardian efficiency to notice his grand entrance, much to his growing irritation. The prince's annoyance turned to shock as he beheld the Baycoronian fleet. These were not mere wooden boats, but colossal, steel-hulled marvels. His lust for power instantly shifted toward acquiring such formidable technology for his own empire. His attempt to force his way into a reserved docking spot met an icy wall of authority. The guards, unbothered by his royal title, commanded him to vacate the area. Humiliation burned in the prince's chest as he realized his prestige held no weight here. Back in Baymard, the eve of departure saw Landon settling his affairs. He gathered the women of his household, each a capable official, to entrust them with the administration of his empire, ensuring everything would flourish in his absence. He tasked Mother Kim with safeguarding the environment and cleaning up the water pollution in Riverdale. With confidence and poise, she accepted, knowing her efforts were vital to the health of the citizens he had worked so hard to protect. Grace Lai took charge of the merchant associations, while Lucy, as the future queen, reinforced the nation's security protocols. With his inner circle prepared to lead, Landon finally allowed himself a moment of rest before the long journey ahead. Dawn broke on the morning of departure. The convoy moved as one, a force of progress cutting through the winter landscape. The mission was clear: reach the north, save the vulnerable, and keep the secrets of Baymard from falling into the wrong hands. Deep in Arcadina's western territory, the rhythm of the journey was broken. A cloud of black smoke rose above a distant village, a sign of conflict. Landon declared an emergency, pushing his drivers to full speed toward the site of the turmoil. The arrival was swift and terrifying to the oppressors. Wolfhound bandits, who had been brutalizing the villagers, suddenly found themselves staring down a force of technological superiority they had only ever heard of in legends. Arrogance was the bandits' final mistake. Believing the rumors that Baymard was weak, they attempted to fight back, only to be neutralized by advanced combat tactics and non-lethal precision. The heroes had arrived, and the lawless lands were about to learn a hard lesson. Amidst the aftermath of the skirmish, a young girl named Gloria found her voice. She didn't want to be a victim any longer. She begged Landon to let her join the fight, seeking the strength to protect those who had suffered too much. Landon saw the fire in the girl's soul. He rejected her pleas for frontline combat, but offered her a role of equal honor, the medical corps. He taught her that the hands that heal are just as powerful as the ones that wield the sword. With the village secured, and Gloria under the wing of his medical team, Landon pushed forward. They tracked the Wolfhound bandits to their hidden lair, ready to dismantle the organization that had terrorized the region for years. The lair fell within hours. The Baymardian forces acted with surgical precision, liberating captives and securing the bandits before they even realized the battle had begun. Yet, the main target remained elusive, having stepped out to deliver tributes. When the boss finally returned, he walked straight into his own downfall. Captivity was a foreign and terrifying concept for a man who had reigned as a king of the lawless. He begged, bribed, and threatened, but the soldiers remained as silent as the stone walls. Justice was served. The stolen goods were returned to their rightful owners, and the once feared wolfhound bandits were left to rot in cells magically sealed by Landon's system. For the villagers, the era of fear was finally at an end. Miles away, the shadow of Landon Barn loomed. Consumed by rage after a failed assassination, the king marched toward a confrontation. He had identified the traitor, Baron Kane, and his heart was set on a violent retribution as he closed the distance to Baymard. Alec's arrogance was his weapon, but he remained unaware of the true power Landon had cultivated. As the two paths began to align, the Northern Territory braced for a collision that would decide the future of the entire empire. The stage is set for a deceptive march. Landon Barn leads his forces toward the enemy, masking his knowledge of the treachery ahead, while his confidants struggle to suppress their fury at Baron Kane. Inside the vibrant hub of Green Mart, the hum of commerce is interrupted. A surprise inspection by a legendary government team brings the mundane shopping atmosphere to a sudden, tense halt. The mystery team is revealed, public health inspectors led by Mother Winnie. Her arrival sends a ripple of awe through the staff and customers who recognize the famous Duchess. Inspection is not just a duty, it is a lecture. Mother Winnie guides her team through rigorous protocols, ensuring every facility in Baymard meets the highest standards of safety. Under the cover of inky black darkness, the empires collide. Princely Barn leads his unit through the freezing, snow-laden woods, fueled by a dark, burning desire to see the ghostly prince fall. From a different flank, Connor advances with his own hidden agenda. He dreams of not just victory, but of seizing Landon Barn's favor and ruling in the aftermath of the coming slaughter. The forest erupts. The silence of the night is shattered by the whistle of arrows, as Princely Barn's forces are met with a deadly, prepared defense that they did not see coming. Amidst the chaos, Captain Zion makes a selfless choice. He chooses to stay behind, a guardian of the gate, to buy precious time for his young master to escape the encroaching steel. The base's defenses are activated. Traps and boulders turn the forest floor into a death trap, as Captain Zion unleashes every weapon to slow the momentum of the invaders. Brutality meets necessity. Captain Belboozer reveals his heartless nature, forcing his men to cross the spiked pits over the bodies of their own comrades, showing no mercy even to the dying. William Barnston prepares his final gambit. Even as his base burns, he writes to the only person he trusts, ensuring the hope for the future doesn't perish tonight. He moves like a ghost among his own guards. William Barnston adopts the guise of a common warrior, hiding his true identity to keep his men moving towards safety without them trying to save him. Confusion breeds distrust. When the two armies meet, they find themselves locked in a surreal stalemate, realizing that two different princes have aimed their sights on the same target. A tense meeting between brothers. Princely Barn and Connor mask their inner turmoil with forced etiquette, each viewing the other as an obstacle in their singular climb to power. Under the alias of Commander Charles, William Barnston rallies his elite archers. He prepares a trap of black powder and rope, turning the sector into an inescapable labyrinth. The line is breached. Smoke and fire consume the entrance, and the invaders rush forward, only to run headlong into the chaos of William Barnston's perfectly timed traps. Chaos descends upon the sector. William Barnston's mind-altering traps force the two invading forces to turn their blades on one another, their distrust erupting into a bloody internal war. A symphony of destruction. William Barnston's master plan unfolds as hidden barrels ignite, turning the terrain into a wall of fire that halts the invaders' progress once again. With his men sent to safety, William Barnston stands alone. He chooses his own ending, donning his signature mask to greet his inevitable captors with defiance. The confrontation begins. Connor and Princely Barn loom over the captured prince, their curiosity overshadowed by their greed, demanding the secrets of his hidden empire. The ground trembles as a new force arrives. Modern vehicles roar into the snowy estate, effectively cutting off the two princes and turning the tables in a heartbeat. The final boss enters the fray. Landon Barn steps out with a casual grace, his presence alone silencing the bickering armies as he prepares to settle the score. Words are his sharpest weapon. Landon Barn trade barbs with the brothers, his cool demeanor highlighting just how out of their depth the two princes truly are. The battle turns into a dance. Festus and the Baymardian soldiers perform with lethal efficiency, using their superior weaponry to systematically dismantle the invading ranks. Death arrives like a shadow. Landon Barn charges into the fray, leaving the princes with no choice but to face the might of Baymard as he fights to rescue his kin. Landon Barn, once a man of the modern world, now finds himself in a clash for his very life. Transmigrated into this world, he faces his own brothers, who underestimate his newfound strength and the tactical genius he wields from his previous life. With movements reminiscent of a street fighter, Landon easily dominates the field, turning the brothers' aggressive sword swings into his own advantage. The battle turns cold as Lee discovers that his most loyal knight has been working against him all along, signaling the crumbling of his grand plans. Amidst the fray, William appears like a casual observer, unbothered by the violence, clutching a bag of peanuts as if at a theater show. William reveals the truth. These men were never truly loyal to the princes, but were undercover agents sent by his own family years ago. The battle concludes in under 30 minutes. The defeated princes are captured, their forces dismantled by the sheer brilliance of the Baymardians. With the conflict resolved, families reunite. Mona and Odin, longtime strategists, finally meet the man who saved their son, recognizing Landon as a fellow mastermind. Landon unveils his grand vision, a unified continent built on peace, trade, and shared technology, formalized through a new treaty with William. The signatures dry, sealing the fate of Arcadina. William is destined for the throne, and the system confirms the path toward the host's ultimate mission. The caravan departs, transporting prisoners and allies alike. For the passengers, the comfort of the Baymardian sleeping pods is a shock to their senses. Far away, Nopline plots his own campaign, unaware that his secret reinforcements are marching straight into a trap. The return to Baymard is triumphant. The king is home, and the wheels of his next grand plan are already turning. A touching reunion occurs as Lucius discovers that his former young master, Odin, has been alive all these years. The studio is ready. Television, a marvel the world has never seen, is finally about to change the lives of every citizen in Baymard. With a sharp eye, Landon personally screens each film, correcting every detail to ensure the highest quality for his citizens. The next phase of his plan begins at the barracks. A new sector, cloaked in mystery, is ready for recruitment. Elite candidates gather, unaware of the rigorous, painful training that awaits them in the mysterious Shaolin sector. Landon addresses the soldiers, warning them of the suffering and physical breaking that defines the way of Shaolin. Demonstrations begin. Stones are shattered and nails are driven into wood by bare hands, leaving the recruits in a state of shell-shocked disbelief. Landon himself demonstrates the impossible, proving that there are no limits to what the human body can achieve with discipline. Meanwhile, the arrogant Prince Sky makes his way to Pigot City, his heart set on stealing a queen. A secret confrontation occurs between the disguised Santa and his love rival, Sky, neither knowing the true depth of the other's involvement. The day arrives. Baymard descends into organized chaos as citizens fight for the chance to own the first televisions. Magic enters their living rooms. The families gather, watching Game of Thrones, utterly captivated by the moving images and sounds. The missions are complete. With reward points and new technology unlocking, the leap toward the digital age is now unstoppable. The future of sweetness arrives. With the successful harvest of cocoa, Landon sets his sights on a new revolution, the creation of chocolate. In the heart of the kingdom, the ambitious monarch Landon initiates a project that would shift the course of history, introducing the concept of an arcade gaming industry to his most trusted engineer, Tim. Landon lays out a meticulous 5-month timeline, bridging the gap between theoretical university education and practical manufacturing. ensuring his workforce is trained to innovate rather than just assemble. With the vision for the gaming industry solidified, Landon tasks Tim with managing 15,000 workers to build a facility that will change the world, his excitement barely contained. Across the city, the three exiled princes from Corona endure the harsh realities of military life, their once arrogant attitudes replaced by a desperate, humble struggle to survive through their training. The brothers' routine is shattered by the arrival of their combat instructor, First Lieutenant Matthew Johnson, known to the students only as the Fear Devil. Fear grips the princes as they face the man whose mere presence makes them want to flee the battlefield, an encounter that pushes them further toward true, disciplined maturity. Meanwhile, the campaign of charity continues, with Major Bury leading an expedition deep into the Coronian territories to deliver aid and dismantle corrupt cults. Upon reaching Fa Village, Bury and his men step forward with respect rather than force, signaling to the suspicious villagers that their intentions are purely benevolent. With royal papers and the authority of Baymard, Bury secures the village chief Gringo's trust, setting the stage for the distribution of supplies and medicine. The transformation is immediate. The village, once paralyzed by fear and poverty, now overflows with gratitude as the Baymardian supplies turn suffering into hope. The mission deepens as Bury unveils the medical phase, promising free treatment for those the village had previously abandoned to their cursed fates. The village chief brings forward the plight of Dartomi, an orphaned boy living in isolation, bearing a deformity that the villagers mistook for a curse. Bury approaches the mountain hut with respect, knowing that behind the rotting wood hides a soul broken by the cruelty of a world that viewed him as a monster. Bury speaks the same words that once saved him, appealing to the boy's humanity and urging him to take a chance at a new destiny. The walls of the boy's heart crumble as Bury reveals that his condition is not a curse, but a treatable defect, igniting a spark of hope that had been long extinguished. In the shadows, the antagonist Landon Barn leads his dark forces through the treacherous wilderness, nearing a hidden base for their long-planned invasion. Alec prepares his nearly 50,000 strong army, his arrogance blinding him to the true capabilities of his son's kingdom. Simultaneously, Commander Purris and the forces of Tariq sail toward the coast, armed with stolen information and a thirst for destruction. In her isolated estate, Carrie Barn, now broken and bitter, reigns as a she-devil, crushing those who cross her with a mix of cruelty and desperation. Back at the center of it all, Landon tracks his enemy's movements with the precision of a strategist, his busy life revolving around the coming storm. The activation of the Hades Code signals the start of mobilization, as Baymard shifts its resources into a state of total defensive readiness. As the gloom of spring settles over the region, the evacuation buses race against time, clearing the roads to protect innocent lives. Landon Barn approaches the gates, unaware that he is walking directly into a trap laid by the son he discarded. The final confrontation begins. Landon watches the enemy forces assemble, ready to unveil the true might of his kingdom. The skies thunder and the earth trembles as Baymard unleashes its hidden power, leaving the invading army in total, devastating disarray. The battle against the forces of Arcadina had turned into a slaughter. The Baymardian artillery rained down for 45 minutes, leaving the field a hellish landscape of smoke and despair. Landon Barn, the king who once planned for greatness, felt his foundation crumble. His army was decimated, and the realization that his own son, Landon, had engineered this destruction dawned on him with bitter irony. Landon stood upon the high walls, his voice ringing out with playful disdain. He mocked his father's intelligence, confirming that the catastrophe below was his own design. The king laughed, a sound raw with fury. He recognized the tactical genius of a true Barn, finally understanding that the war he sought to wage had ended before the enemy had even drawn their swords. Despite the defeat, Alec's mind drifted to greed. He saw the godly weapons in action and plotted to steal the secrets of their production, hoping to use them to unite the Pino continent under his rule. Landon triggered Operation Golden Goose. The statues that Alec had ignored came to life, revealing themselves as massive armored tanks that choked off all hope of retreat. Alec realized the game was over. He abandoned his loyal soldiers, callously treating them as shields for his own desperate escape from the field of death. Just when escape seemed near, a wall of guards emerged. Leading them was Warden Mitchin, a man of supernatural strength and the calm demeanor of a predator. Alec lunged, blinded by arrogance. He expected an easy kill, unaware that the man before him was a master of a different kind of strength, one tempered by a system that defied mortal limits. The clash was one-sided. Every strike from Alec was countered with bone-crushing force, reducing the proud king's movements to the desperate thrashing of a cornered beast. Beaten and broken, the king finally conceded. He had been tossed aside like garbage, forced to acknowledge the superiority of a man he considered beneath him. Secured in heavy iron bangles, Alec was transported away. He kept his head high, a pathetic display of pride while he plotted his next betrayal from the confines of his metal cage. When the cell door opened, Alec froze. Before him stood his brother and allies, men he had personally ordered executed decades ago, standing in the flesh, alive and accusingly watching. The revelation shattered his mind. Odin was alive, and he brought with him the truth that Arcadina's future throne was already promised to another, William, his own nephew. Alec descended into madness. He attacked his son, but was easily suppressed. The weight of his failures, his murders, and the betrayal of his bloodline finally broke him completely. Elsewhere, the streets were alive with trade. The influence of Baymard was everywhere, from new fashion trends to pet care, as the capital hummed with a different kind of energy. Prince Sky arrived in the city, blinded by his own narcissism. He prepared to charm Queen Penelope, convinced that his looks alone would win her heart and secure the throne. Sky pampered himself with modern soaps and creams, enamored by his own reflection. He firmly believed that once Penelope saw him, she would abandon her current life to be with him. When Sky finally reached the palace, he was met not with servants, but with cold, disciplined soldiers who insisted on standard protocol, deeply offending the prince's delicate ego. He finally gained an audience. Sky strode forward like he owned the building, expecting a romantic welcome, but was met only with the queen's cold, businesslike impatience. The fool made his move, insulting her betrothed and offering a pittance as a dowry. He clearly had no idea that the woman he was insulting was a warrior who had been waiting for a reason to strike. Without a word, she struck. The prince crumpled, blood spraying from his broken nose, his smug expression replaced by a look of pure, agonizing shock. He challenged her to a spar, hoping to save his dignity. He was wrong. Penelope danced through his attacks, systematically breaking him down with a ruthlessness that sent his guards into a panic. Defeated and humiliated, Sky was thrown out of the palace gates. He left not as a charming suitor, but as a battered lesson in manners, swearing vengeance that no one took seriously. Elsewhere, the gears of war were turning. William addressed his clandestine army, promising that their long wait in the shadows was coming to an end. The march on the capital was imminent. In the shadows of the palace, another queen sharpened her blade. The web of vengeance was tightening, and the capital was about to become the site of a final, bloody reckoning. In the cold shadows of a dark dungeon, retribution finally arrives. Arcadina, long hardened by the fires of her past, confronts her sister Sierra. The first queen of the empire now finds herself at the mercy of the very woman she once sought to destroy. As the blade traces a path of blood across her skin, the stage is set for a final, brutal reckoning. Words are no longer enough to satisfy the hunger for justice. With each slice of the dagger, the past unfolds, a cycle of betrayal and cruelty orchestrated by their husband, the man who turned both sisters into monsters. For Sierra, the pain is not just physical. It is the shattering of her pride as her beauty is erased forever. The final truth is revealed. The daughter of the sister, Carrie, has already been dealt with. The cycle of vengeance is reaching its bloody conclusion, and as the blade plunges into the heart of the first queen, Sierra's last regret is not for her crimes, but for the man she once called her husband. While one queen falls, another watcher in the shadows delights in the chaos. The palace intrigue deepens, for Arcadina is merely a piece in a much larger, more lethal game. One down, one more to go, the lady whispers to the night. In the bustling land of Baymard, life moves forward with purpose. Landon, a man of modern brilliance in a world of tradition, reviews the progress of his new territories. Here, development is a slow, steady march as he orchestrates a revolution in infrastructure and industry. Plans shift as quickly as the wind. A request for a taste testing at the industrial food sector forces Landon to sacrifice a secret day out with his mother. The responsibilities of a leader leave little room for personal desires, but the promise of new, delectable products keeps him moving forward. The lower industry, usually hidden from the public eye, reveals its marvels to the king and his loyal secretary. The sheer scale of the production leaves Brian in awe, a stark contrast to the refined halls of the palace he is accustomed to. Taste testing begins in earnest. The workshop is filled with an array of experimental delicacies, from dark cocoa bars to strange, colorful confections. Landon evaluates each sample, knowing that the success of these products hinges on the feedback gathered today. Brian raises a valid concern. How do they ensure customers don't abandon the product after a single bad experience with an intense dark cocoa bar? The solution, however, lies in the upcoming water festival, a golden opportunity for free sampling. Peace is fleeting. A sudden, chilling system alert shatters Landon's calm. A new mission awaits, and the consequence of failure is absolute. He must leave Baymard at once, locking his office door and disappearing into the night to face the unseen threat. Deep in the hilly ranges of Dafrus, the weak are hunted. Prince Henry and his remaining men are dragged in chains toward a fortified base. After weeks of suffering and attrition, they are brought to the foot of a mountain that serves as their final destination. The cruel reality of the empire is laid bare. Prince Henry, labeled the weakest of his kin, is discarded like trash. His own brothers, fearing a potential rise, have orchestrated his demise, viewing him as a threat that must be erased before the sun sets on the next day. Amusement for the wicked. The base prepares a gruesome show, an arena filled with bagwers, creatures as fast as they are deadly. Starved and lethal, they wait for their prey, a final, cruel spectacle to entertain the guards while they place their bets. The odds are stacked against the desperate. 57 prisoners remain, armed only with simple steel, facing a swarm of beasts. The guards cheer from above, their greed manifest as they wager on which prisoner will fall first to the fangs of the hungry creatures. The battle is a blur of agony and steel. Henry fights with the spirit of a true warrior even as his strength wanes. Each strike, each defense is a desperate prayer for a miracle that seems light years away. The creatures close in, relentless and starving. Then the impossible happens. A thick pink mist descends upon the arena, swallowing the battle and the fighters in a single, silent wave. The cheering stops, replaced by the murmurs of a crowd who cannot fathom this sudden, mystical intervention. As the smoke clears, the carnage is laid bare. The beasts are slain, and standing in their midst is a stranger who claims to be a fairy godmother. His casual confidence shocks the guards and provides the first flicker of hope for the surviving prisoners. He is no fairy, but a king of unconventional warfare. Landon turns the arena into a trap, his explosives tearing through the enemy ranks. The spectators' laughter turns to screams as the tables are violently turned, and a chaotic path of escape is carved through the carnage. A king doesn't work for free. Before the escape is complete, Landon systematically strips the base of its ill-gotten wealth. With a flick of his wrist and a hidden power, the treasury is emptied, leaving the bandits with nothing but empty rooms and broken dreams. The final stand. Landon seals the prisoners away for their safety, opting to face the remaining garrison alone. He stands in the hallway, a solitary figure against a wave of steel, his movements fluid and lethally precise as he prepares for the final push. Arrows rain down like a storm, yet not one finds its mark. Landon weaves through the chaos, his blade a blur of silver. The guards' arrogance is replaced by a primal terror as they realize they are not fighting a man, but a force of nature. The base has fallen. The commander is broken, his men scattered like leaves in a gale. With the mission complete, the prisoners are reunited with their savior. The fairy godmother has delivered them from the jaws of death, and the path to freedom lies open. A miracle in the moonlight. Landon reveals his final trick, a vessel that takes to the skies. Henry and his weary men gaze down at the dark, vast expanse of their empire, traveling in hours a distance that would have taken weeks to traverse by foot. Bonds are forged in the fires of conflict. Henry, once the weak prince, realizes that the man who saved him is a legend among kings. The journey back to the base is filled with mutual respect and a promise that the era of the weak has truly ended. But vengeance is patient. The demonic prince arrives at the base only to find the silence of a grave. His prey has vanished, and the king's treasure is gone. A game of shadows begins, and the hunt for the escaped prince has only just begun. While empires clash, life in Baymard persists in the pursuit of growth and joy. Perry and his wife prepare to test their mettle in the arena of fear factor, a testament to the thriving, vibrant spirit of a kingdom that refuses to be cowed by the shadows of war. In a world where prosperity flows from the visionary leadership of the Baymardian Empire, King Landon Barn stands as a beacon of progress. Yet, beyond the grand halls of power, the people are drawn into a different kind of spectacle, the legendary fear factor, an underworld-themed trial that pushes the boundaries of human endurance for the grand prize of 70,000 bays. The stage is set under the watchful eye of the host, Colin Bohr. The atmosphere crackles with anticipation as the teams prepare to face their darkest fears, ranging from claustrophobic depths to dizzying heights, all for the golden dream of financial freedom. The first challenge is a test of sheer grit, to plunge oneself into a vat of cow blood and harvest live bindy worms using only their mouths. For Perry, the image of those writhing creatures is a nightmare, but the promise of a future for his son keeps his resolve ironclad. Jean stands on the precipice of the challenge, her heart hammering against her ribs. She finds strength in the gaze of her husband, knowing that their collective struggle is a small price to pay for the security of their families tomorrow. With a burst of adrenaline, Jean hurls herself into the vat. The worms, drawn to the scent of the cow blood, immediately swarm her skin. Every bite is a stinging reminder of the stakes, yet she remains undeterred, fueled by the desperate desire to succeed. Perry moves with animalistic speed, his mouth working in harmony with his wife's movements. He ignores the repulsive squirming on his tongue, his eyes fixed on the collection jar. Against all odds, they shatter the record, securing their place in the next round. But while the games continue in Baymard, a dark storm gathers on the horizon. A mysterious fleet flying a unified flag cuts through the high seas. Their destination is clear, and their intent is malice, a calculated march toward the shores of Baymard. Leading this armada is the feared Commander Purris, a man whose pride is only matched by his martial prowess. Confident in his invincibility and the secret intelligence he believes will cripple the enemy, he prepares his men for a glorious, bloody conquest. Captain Nicodemus serves as the herald of this invasion. As the shore draws near, he approaches the commander to confirm the formation. Every sailor on the ships dreams of the spoils to come, unaware of the technological nightmare waiting to greet them. Back in Baymard, the alarm is raised. The radar pings with the rhythmic precision of a heartbeat, identifying 68 hostile vessels. The coastal guards, masters of efficiency, set the gears of war in motion, evacuating civilians and readying the mighty navy. With the engines roaring to life, the Baymardian fleet surges forward. These are not mere transport ships, as the invaders believe, but instruments of absolute naval superiority, designed to meet the enemy far from the safety of the harbor. As the fleets converge, the silence of the ocean is broken by a calm, amplified voice. The Baymardian Navy offers a final chance for surrender, a gesture of mercy that the overconfident invaders will inevitably mistake for weakness. Purris, fueled by hubris, mocks the demand. He sees only transport vessels and civilian guards. In his arrogance, he orders his men to prepare for carnage, blind to the true nature of the steel giants that now surround his fleet like a cage. The battle begins with a roar of thunder. The Baymardian cannons unleash a torrent of fire, shredding the wooden ships of the invaders. Panic erupts as the reality of the situation hits the Terraquin warriors. They are fighting not soldiers, but death itself. The Marines strike like shadows. Masked and armed with modern weaponry, they swarm the decks. The invaders, already broken by the shelling, are forced to retreat to the lower levels, where they find no escape from the relentless advance of Baymard's finest. Below deck, the pride of the commander is shattered. Purris, now hiding among his own men, listens to the sounds of his fleet being systematically dismantled. The realization that their intelligence was a lie and that their demise is certain finally takes hold. Mitchell reaches the lowest deck, a space filled with the wretched and broken. He speaks to the slaves not as captives, but as fellow humans. The promise of freedom lights a fire in their hollow eyes, and they agree to help identify the hidden soldiers. The betrayal is swift. With a single point of a finger, the slaves expose their former masters. Purvis, desperate and cornered, tries to lash out, but the weight of his arrogance is no match for the tactical precision of the Marines closing in on him. With the victory secured at sea, the focus shifts to the ongoing transformation of Corona. A new era of education and prosperity begins to take root, as the common folk embrace literacy and the tools provided by the Baymardian influence. Philomena steps into her new life as a secretary. Armed with newfound knowledge and the simple, effective tools of the trade, she navigates her work with pride. For her, this isn't just a job, it's the foundation for her daughter's future. Back at the heart of Baymard, Landon continues to push the boundaries of technology. The creation of the vending machine is a small step, but it signals the convenience and modern efficiency that will eventually redefine life across the entire continent. As the dust settles on the battle, a new complication arrives at Baymard's gates: the Gustave family. Driven by greed and the misguided belief that they can manipulate the king, they step into the modern world with archaic, twisted motivations. The daughters, Debbie and Prela, mirror their mother's arrogance. They see Baymard not as a triumph of progress, but as a territory to be conquered. Their eyes are fixed on the crown, blinded to the reality that their old-world schemes are already obsolete. Gustave's attempt to use his influence fails miserably. Rebuffed by bureaucrats who value merit over lineage, his frustration boils over. He views the order and discipline of Baymard as a personal insult to his noble status. Settled in their hotel, the Gustaves plot. They view Lucy not as a queen, but as an obstacle to be removed. With hearts full of venom, they begin to weave their web of seduction and deceit, entirely unaware of the true power they are about to challenge. The stage is set for a clash between the past and the future. As the Gustaves prepare to execute their hollow schemes, the King of Baymard looks upon his domain, ready to navigate the coming storm with the grace and strength of an empire that will never bow. In the vast and developing empire of Baymard, Gustave, the opportunistic and cruel father of Lucy, begins a scheme to insert himself into royal favor. Lucy, once an impoverished girl and now the cherished future queen, had long ago been abandoned by this man. The officials at the palace are stunned. The woman in the portrait is the spitting image of the beloved future queen. News travels fast, and soon, Lucy is forced to confront the father she has spent years trying to forget. Though Landon remains supportive, the mention of Lucy's reaction confirms his worst fears. The trauma of her childhood is not easily buried, and the king is determined to ensure his future queen is never bullied again. Dinner is a somber affair. Lucy, usually bright and expressive, wears a hollow smile. The weight of the past hangs heavy, and the palace walls feel smaller than ever as she faces the impending reunion. In the privacy of their chambers, the dam finally breaks. Landon narrates the harsh reality of her past, and Lucy weeps, feeling the crushing weight of her family's betrayal. The others vow to stand by her no matter the cost. Miles away, the atmosphere is toxic with greed. Gustave and his family celebrate, blinded by their own ambition and convinced that Lucy's fear is their gateway to becoming the first royal-linked family in Baymard. The day of the meeting arrives. Dressed in their finest, pearl-encrusted garments, the family rides towards the palace. Debbie and Prela view the grandeur with envy, already plotting to claim Landon for themselves. In the waiting room, Gustave delivers his final, chilling instructions. Fear lingers in the air. They know that to fail today means returning to a life worse than the one they left behind. With encouragement from Mother Kim, Lucy finds her footing. She is no longer the girl on the street. She is the future queen of Baymard. She stands tall, ready to face the ghosts of her past. The reunion begins. Gustave and his daughters wear masks of affection, performing their roles with practiced elegance. Landon watches, his amusement masked by a diplomatic smile as he sees through their act. Landon feigns ignorance, granting the family privacy in the garden. He knows exactly what they plan to do. The trap is set, and he is content to let them play their hand. The palace garden, filled with symbols of Lucy's status, provokes deep jealousy in the guests. Debbie and Prela whisper venomous plans, their eyes darting around as they measure the wealth they intend to steal. The moment they are alone, the masks shatter. Gustav is once again the tyrant. He commands Lucy to kneel, and for a split second, the old ingrained fear returns to her heart as he threatens her life. They demand she break her engagement and yield her position to them. But the fear is ebbing away, replaced by the protective fire of knowing she is the queen of this domain. She shouts her refusal, a sound that echoes across the garden. The dynamic shifts instantly. Gustav is stunned, he expects the weak girl, but faces a woman who has found her strength. She reminds them of who she is now. The statues, the name on the lawns, every piece of Baymard confirms her identity. They are trespassing on the authority of the future queen. Driven by madness, Gustav lunges, but his path is cut short by a thunderous sound. Hader and her private guards emerge, surrounding them, weapons drawn. The game has changed. The elite guards show no mercy. They have watched from the shadows, and Hader is ready to end the threat once and for all. The fear has shifted from Lucy to her tormentors. The arrival of Landon and Mother Kim feels like a judgment. The Gustav family desperately tries to return to their pitiful act, but the facade is crumbling before the royal gaze. The family pleads their case, painting themselves as victims. Lucy watches, amused by their desperate theatrics. She knows she holds the evidence that will seal their fate. The questioning is a masterpiece of deception and truth. Mother Kim plays along, allowing them to dig their own graves with every lie they utter, while Lucy prepares her final blow. 3 days later, the trap snaps shut. The family is led into a broadcast room, unaware that the cameras are already rolling. They believe they are about to be crowned, but the truth is their execution. As the recording plays, the nation watches in horror. The mask is stripped away. The public sees the true, vile face of the family that claim to be victims. The king's judgment is swift. He exposes every crime, every betrayal, and every act of cruelty. The arrogance of the family is crushed under the weight of the undeniable truth. Reduced to peasants, stripped of their titles and wealth, they are exiled. The king's mercy is their only shield against the execution they truly deserve, but the punishment is a fate worse than death for their greedy hearts. Cast out of Baymard, they face the long, arduous journey back to a life of labor and obscurity. The drama ends, but their new, harsh reality is only just beginning. Far away, William prepares for his own reckoning. The tyrant Alec is finished, and the new king stands ready to rebuild his empire, keeping his love for Lucy and his bond with Landon as his North Star. The execution ceremony marks a pivotal shift in Arcadina. William, the young prince, stands before the masses, not as a tyrant, but as a beacon of hope, promising justice for years of suffering and setting the stage for his coronation. The once mighty Dragon King, Landon Barn, is reduced to a shadow of his former self. Starved and weakened, he faces the same people he once oppressed, his heart filled with bitter regrets and futile anger. Justice demands its due. One by one, the corrupt ministers who fueled Alec's reign meet their end, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears as the executioner's blade descends. For Duchess Arcadina, the moment is personal. Fueled by the memory of her murdered child, she takes her turn to strike, turning her grief into a final, vengeful act against the monster who betrayed their family. The tyrant's reign ends not with a plea, but with the cold steel of justice. With one final, forceful blow, the head of Landon Barn rolls, closing a dark chapter of Arcadinian history forever. Victory brings its own burden. With the tyrant dead, William and Odin dive into the financial ruins of the empire, uncovering years of embezzlement and gross mismanagement that threaten the future of their nation. The rot runs deep, hidden in the labyrinthine royal vaults. William mandates a new order, transforming the disorganized treasury into a bastion of accountability, determined to rebuild what was lost. Miles away, the winds of change are blowing in Tariq. A secret convoy moves under the cover of a mission for justice, carrying the true king back to his rightful place and promising a storm for the current rulers. In Dayfrus, the devilish Prince Ulrich Tudor seethes. With his brother Henry escaped and his father fading, he prepares for a bloody ascent to the throne, blinded by his own arrogance and paranoia. Back in Baymard, Landon finds no rest. The system demands intervention in far-off empires, threatening his carefully laid plans for a continent-wide union and forcing him to juggle empire building with the impending wedding of Santa. Expansion is the heartbeat of Baymard. Landon ventures into the new territories gifted by William, eager to bring his technological marvels to the neglected borderlands and establish the foundations of a new era. In Menda Town, resistance meets reality. A group of entrenched local nobles attempts to challenge Landon's new order, clinging to their outdated privileges and slave-based economy, unaware of the power they are testing. Their ultimatum is met with cold, calculated swiftness. Landon, tired of their games, calls their bluff, proving that in his lands, the rules of the old world are permanently broken. Stripped of their influence and their stolen wealth, the defiant nobles are cast out. Menda Town is liberated from their greed, marking the beginning of true progress and a life of dignity for its inhabitants. With the political rot cleared, a deadlier threat emerges. A creature of ancient legend, feared by the locals for generations, now stirs in the shadows of the cave, demanding a sacrifice that only Landon can stop. Landon recognizes the beast for what it is, an apex predator on the brink of extinction. Armed with science, resolve, and a score to settle, he prepares to confront the nightmare of Menda Town once and for all. The entrance to the abyss looms ahead. For Menda Town, this is the final hurdle to salvation. As the moon rises, Landon leads his men into the dark, ready to end the reign of terror of the witch's last pets. Across the empire, the echoes of the ceremony continue to resonate. William's voice becomes the blueprint for Arcadina's future, as he moves to turn his vision of peace and human rights into a tangible reality. The final symbol of the tyrant's rule remains as a stark reminder. It is the end of an era of fear, and the beginning of a long, arduous process of rebuilding the broken soul of the kingdom. Landon's ambition transcends mere conquest. He maps out the future, fortifying his borders with grand designs, ensuring that his technological advancements remain secure against those who would steal or destroy them. The transformation is already taking root. From the ashes of tyranny, schools rise, bringing the gift of literacy and logic to a populace long denied such basic necessities. Hope is no longer a dream, it is becoming a reality. The map of Arcadina is being rewritten. Under Landon's guidance, the chaotic, neglected frontier is turning into a structured engine of progress, proving that good leadership can breathe life into the most barren of lands. The challenges mount, but Landon does not falter. He readies his fleets, knowing that the unification of the Pino continent requires both the gentle hand of progress and the crushing iron fist of military might. Michiel, the king in the shadows, draws closer to his throne. His patience has been tested, his spirit forged in the fire of betrayal, and now the reckoning for Nopline and the usurpers is finally at hand. Ulrich Tudor awaits his moment. He views his rivals as pawns and his path to the crown as an inevitable destiny, oblivious to the fact that his brother Henry has become a variable he cannot account for. Unbeknownst to them, the web of fate tightens. Sirius and Henry struggle to survive against unseen shadows in their respective empires, their futures dangling by a thread that Landon alone can reach. The Pino continent stands at a precipice. As Landon prepares his forces, kingdoms fall, new ones arise, and a singular, unified destiny begins to emerge, forged in the fires of justice and technological progress. Landon Barn, the visionary king of Baymard, leads his kingdom toward progress while dealing with the terrifying threat of the Pangeras, ancient, monstrous creatures haunting the nearby towns. With his subjects going missing, he takes matters into his own hands to protect his people. Despite the warnings of his advisors, who fear the legendary strength of these beastly Pangeras, the king remains unshaken in his resolve, trusting in his superior technology and tactical planning. The preparation ends. 50 soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry, board their trucks and head toward the forbidden forest, ready to confront the darkness that has plagued their lands for centuries. Deep within the dense forest, the soldiers track the beasts to a colossal cave. The remnants of past victims litter the ground, confirming the monstrous presence they are about to face. Silence blankets the cavernous lair. broken only by the rustling of leaves and the heavy, anxious breathing of the soldiers as they advance, weapons raised into the pitch-black abyss. The calm shatters. Predators emerge from the ceiling, fast and lethal, but the soldiers of Baymard are ready. Gunfire erupts, lighting up the darkness with flashes of death. The battle is fierce and desperate. The Pangeras are as fast as lightning and armored in thick hide, throwing the soldiers against the cavern walls with terrifying, brute force. With his team pinned, Landon takes the ultimate risk. He forces the creatures to swallow their doom, turning the tide of the battle in one explosive, calculated maneuver. The cave trembles. The Pangeras are decimated, their threat silenced forever. Landon and his men retreat just in time, their faces covered in the grime of the battle. The monsters are no more. The soldiers carry the heads of the beasts as proof, ready to return to the town and grant peace to the spirits of the long-lost victims. In Menda town, hope ignites. The criers announce the town's integration into the Baymard Empire, promising fair wages and freedom to the oppressed slaves who have lived in fear for years. Amidst the joy, Naomi Chi remains an outcast. Burned by a cruel noble's wife, she is unjustly labeled a witch by the ignorant townspeople, who fear her scars and believe her cursed. The crowd roars in triumph as Landon officially declares the end of noble rule. The oppressed finally feel the warmth of justice as the tyrants who once terrorized them are dragged away. The arrival of the king is a spectacle. The townspeople, once crushed under the weight of noble cruelty, now look upon their savior with awe and desperate, newfound hope. Landon's eyes scan the crowd and fixate on Naomi Chi. He recognizes the systemic ignorance that has turned a victim into a pariah, and he decides to put an end to this bullying once and for all. He calls the scarred girl to the stage. Despite the whispers and the cruel stares of the crowd, he offers her a warmth that she has never known, a gesture that challenges their hatred. With the aid of powerful imagery, Landon shatters the superstitions. He shows the crowd the truth. She is not a demon, but a girl who deserves love, respect, and proper care. The crowd's demeanor shifts. The hatred is replaced by shame and compassion. For the first time, Naomi Chi is seen for who she truly is, and the town embraces their new path toward humanity. Back in the capital, the sunrise brings a new, productive day. Landon prepares for his next challenge, revolutionizing the city's entertainment industry by bringing the thrill of pinball to his people. In the workshop, Landon ignites a fever for innovation. He introduces the concept of the pinball machine, challenging his engineers to create complex, unprogrammed adventures for the arcade center. The engineers labor over miles of wire. The complexity is challenging, and mistakes are frequent, but the passion for creating something truly revolutionary keeps them working until late in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the chemical and textile industries are locked in their own intense battle to perfect wetsuits. Their goal is to pass Landon's inspection and enable the future of underwater exploration. Chaos erupts in the Empire of Tariq as Landon's elite soldiers storm the palace. The corrupt rulers find themselves hunted by the very technology they foolishly dismissed as mere sorcery. The palace, once a fortress of oppression, falls into the hands of the Baymardians. The tyrants desperately barricade themselves, unaware that their reign of terror is reaching its violent conclusion. The hunters have become the hunted. Cornered and desperate, the corrupt royalty and their conspirators are dragged before the man they thought they had killed, trembling in disbelief. Michiel lives. The sight of the man they poisoned sends the traitors into a spiral of hysteria and terror, as the truth of their crimes is laid bare by his sudden, ghostly return. With the traitors captured and the empires united under new treaties, the Pino continent stands on the brink of a new era. Unity is finally achieved, and Baymard's influence grows stronger. As peace is restored and treaties are signed, the city returns to its vibrant life. Beauty and fashion icons rise, and the people find joy in the seminars and innovations that the Baymardian dream provides. In the heart of Baymard, the beauty guru Handger begins a seminar that promises to change the very standard of elegance, as he unveils a new age of grooming and makeup before an eager crowd. The seminar takes the form of a theatrical demonstration. Young Mildred is brought onto the stage, acting out the role of an unassuming girl discovering the transformative power of a professional beauty salon. Hanger treats the audience to a masterclass in care, explaining the science of hair and skin, revealing that beauty starts from deep within the dermis, hidden far beneath the surface. The audience watches in shock as Hanger explains the secrets of skin health, teaching them about the importance of cleaning away the impurities that clog the pores of the face. As the transformation continues, the audience engages in a passionate question-and-answer session, treating the beauty seminar like a sacred ritual of knowledge. The transformation is complete. Mildred emerges looking like a star, leaving the audience breathless and eager to replicate the same miraculous beauty for themselves. While Baymard thrives in beauty, the dark empire of Corona harbors resentment. Prince Sky broods in luxury, plotting a cold and cruel revenge against those who dared to reject him. A servant delivers news of a marriage. Sky's twisted plan to humiliate the royal family takes root as he reaches out to the shadows of the underground society to fulfill his bloodthirsty desires. Landon Barn remains the calm center of the storm. He reviews the strategic documents, knowing that the safety of the continent depends on his decisive, calculated actions. With a quick movement, Landon disappears, teleporting across the vast distance to reach the secret meeting grounds where the fate of the kingdoms will be sealed. In the heart of Yadin, King Sirius and Prince Astar await their brother. Despite the gravity of their situation, Astar's appetite remains as bottomless as his optimism. Landon arrives, bringing the hope of a superpower. He is the guardian they need, the architect of a plan that will dismantle their enemies before the year's end. Landon lays bare the truth about the Temple of Dragmas, a hidden plague that has festered for 4 centuries. He promises that this darkness will be uprooted by November. Back in Baymard, the sun shines on a thriving civilization. Landon observes his people, knowing that while they enjoy their peace, he must ready the steel to protect it. The barracks stir with activity. Landon prepares his special forces for the annual test, a secret competition designed to keep his soldiers sharp for the coming wars. The sirens ring out. The Black Scorpios, Red Eagles, and Blue Swans move as one, their training pushed to the limit as they prepare for a simulated high-stakes battle. Tactical maneuvers define the battlefield. Wayne and his squad move through the brush, hunting for the enemy while avoiding the watchful gaze of the enemy Air Force balloons. The battle erupts. Friends turn into enemies as the brigades clash. Paint splatters like blood, marking those who fell in this brutal, high-intensity competition. Eve, the legendary soldier, proves her worth. She maneuvers through the chaos with unparalleled grace, turning the tide of the skirmish with every calculated shot. Wayne waits for the perfect moment. With silent precision, he strikes, turning the hunter into the prey as he eliminates the opposing captain with ruthless efficiency. Infiltration begins. The squad breaches the enemy headquarters through the ventilation system, moving like ghosts to seize control of the enemy's communications. Chaos is their weapon. With a flash, the defenders are blinded and disoriented, leaving them helpless against the swift and tactical entry of the invaders. Miles away in Arcadina, Baron Kane drinks to the death of his rival. He remains ignorant of the truth, dreaming of his own stolen empire, unaware that his clock is ticking. On the distant shores of Lamb, fear reigns. The Temple of Adonis marches, their fanatic knights preparing for a holy war to enforce their tyrannical beliefs upon the world. Meanwhile, the desperate souls of Ramain set sail across the dangerous seas, guided by visions, seeking the savior who might deliver them from the encroaching darkness. The race for technological superiority continues in Baymard. Landon unveils new gadgets for the police and army, preparing them for the inevitable conflicts that threaten their borders. Finally, the team is gathered. With the T-O-D operation looming, Landon looks at his chosen warriors, knowing that the real war has only just begun. In the gloomy, suffocating silence of her estate, Eliza, once the glorious second queen, now stripped of her power, descends into a spiral of rage as she shatters her precious belongings, desperate to reclaim the authority taken from her by William, all while her heart burns with terror for her son Connor, trapped in a cold, distant prison. Regaining her composure, Eliza masks her inner chaos with a cold, noble facade, turning her focus to the venomous butterfly assassins who have accepted her bloody request, as she prepares to strike back at the kingdom that dares to keep her son locked in chains. Far away in the capital of Yadin, Maclean, the king-father, stumbles upon a shocking picture in a Baymardian newspaper. His ex-wife, Mother Winnie, whom he had cruelly cast away based on false pretenses, filling him with a sudden, painful wave of long-buried regret. The night air is thick with the scent of an impending massacre. 2,000 men lurk in the dark forest, waiting for their target, as Captain Chu prepares to execute an ambush that he believes will secure his standing with the temple, unaware of the trap closing in on him. A thunderous, unnatural roar shatters the quiet of the night. The ambushers are caught by a mysterious, overwhelming force that turns their calculated attack into a nightmare of fire and flying debris, leaving their lines broken and their bodies scattered across the bloody forest floor. With the chaos of the explosions as their signal, Astar and Sirius leap into the fray, turning the hunters into the hunted. Astar, despite his playful complaints about being forced to use a sword, sheds his innocent persona to reveal the ruthless strength of a true warrior. Every blow struck by Astar is calculated and lethal. He weaves through the chaotic battlefield like a force of nature, using his enemies' weapons against them, leaving a trail of broken men and silenced screams in his wake as the forest floor becomes a graveyard. Finally, the master of the trap arrives to claim his prize. Landon steps into the circle of 300 hostile men, his calm, mocking smile infuriating Captain Chu, who sees only a man walking to his own death, oblivious to the power he is about to face. Arrogance fills the giant, Harry, as he rushes forward, certain that his size will crush this mysterious opponent. He underestimates the man before him, unaware that he is about to challenge a legend who has never known the meaning of defeat. With a flick of his wrist and 2 fingers, Landon arrests the momentum of the giant's sword, freezing the battlefield in a moment of pure disbelief. Harry struggles to move his weapon, but it holds fast, like a mountain rooted to the earth. Unleashing the rushing mountain, Landon becomes a blur of motion, dual swords moving with the speed of wind. His opponents fall like wheat before a scythe, each slash ending a life with effortless precision, proving that playtime is officially over. Driven to the brink of insanity by Landon's untouchable grace, Captain Chu turns his bow on his own soldiers, firing wildly in a desperate, futile hope to stop the carnage, unaware that his brutality only hastens the destruction of his remaining force. The tide turns permanently as Chu makes his final, desperate gambit, only to be met by Landon's crushing counter-strike. The powerful captain is sent flying like a discarded doll, his bones shattered and his pride thoroughly dismantled by the man he once sought to kill. Weeks later, the wonders of Baymard beckon. Baron Jacob and his companions travel the smooth, magical roads leading to the capital, their skepticism vanishing into thin air as they behold a level of organization and prosperity that seems nothing short of divine creation. Inside their hotel, the travelers are shaken to their core by the television screen, which beams the news of the tyrant Landon Barn's demise, a revelation that forces them to confront the reality of a changing world where the old empires are crumbling before their very eyes. The city of Baymard wakes in a frenzy of celebration. It is Baymard Day, the anniversary of the king's coronation, and the streets are overflowing with joy, colorful stalls, and an infectious, electric energy that has gripped every citizen in the capital. Landon stands before the cheering masses, golden scissors in hand. With a sharp snip, he marks the launch of the historic hot air balloon rides, signaling a new era of wonder where man will finally conquer the sky and rewrite the boundaries of their world. Before boarding, Landon steals a tender moment with his princess, Lucy, his affection for her on full display for the city to witness, a public declaration of love that serves as the heartbeat of the celebration, even as the younger onlookers share a knowing, playful glance. The giant basket lifts, defying the earth beneath them. The passengers hold their breath as the world shrinks, the sensation of flight washing over them in a heady mixture of fear, wonder, and the exhilarating realization that they have truly reached for the heavens. In the shadows of the world, a different kind of gathering unfolds. 15,000 masked men wait in the dark, silent depths, their presence a testament to the hidden influence of the temple, as they prepare to divide the spoils of a world they intend to conquer. The auction begins in the dark, as fraction leaders bid for the districts of Baymard, blind to the fact that they are fighting for a city that will never bow to them. The temple's ambition is vast, but they are playing a game against a king they do not understand. The system presents a new mission, the creation of airports and runways, a task that ignites Landon's imagination. He is no longer just building a city, he is architecting the future of an entire continent, turning the impossible dreams of flight into a tangible reality. In Dayfris, the demonic fairy Eldora Tudor sits in silent judgment. She is a princess of beauty and cruelty, a woman who rules through the fear she harvests, plotting the demise of her brother and the theft of the throne with the cold precision of a serpent. Eldora wraps herself in the guise of the doting daughter, weeping for her dying father, Julius. The old king, blinded by love, remains oblivious to the viper coiled at his side, as she gently manipulates his final decisions to secure her own ascent to power. Back in Riverdale, Landon enlists the help of Yusha and his astronomers. He knows that to command the skies, he must master the weather, and these men are the key to unlocking the secrets of the winds that will guide his future planes home. The earth is broken, and the foundations are laid. The airport project begins in earnest, a monument to a vision that will bridge empires and shrink the distance of the world, marking the end of one journey and the exhilarating beginning of another. With every brick laid and every plan drawn, Landon edges closer to his destiny, building not just a kingdom, but a legacy that will soar among the clouds and define the history of the continent for generations to come, as the era of flight begins. Landon Barn, a man reincarnated from Earth who sought to modernize the continent of Pino, gathered the scholars Yusha and his disciples. He was preparing to change the world by building an academy dedicated to the science of weather, a task he deemed essential for the safety and progress of all nations. Understanding the ancient mastery of celestial observation, Landon aimed to revolutionize their crude recording methods into precise meteorological charts. The scholars, driven by a deep, almost fanatical passion, pledged their lives to the project, eager to serve the visionary monarch. Landon realized that even without modern satellites, the ancient world held immense potential for prediction. By combining book-recorded atmospheric data with modern numerical forecasting, he intended to shield empires from disasters, turning a simple weather project into a global necessity. The logistics of the operation were immense. Landon demanded that the scholars relocate to the capital within 10 days, setting up a rotating shift system that would integrate students and veteran astrologists alike into a unified scientific front for the Pino continent. Just as the meeting drew to a successful conclusion, the serenity was shattered. A shrill, system-generated alarm pierced through Landon's focus, a warning of extreme danger to his distant visitors. His life was now inextricably linked to theirs. If they perished, so would he. Miles away on the open sea, disaster struck. The visitors, who had endured months of travel to reach their savior, found themselves cornered on the final leg of their journey by a fleet of ruthless, greedy pirates who saw them only as high-value merchandise. Lucia, alongside her brothers, braced for an impossible battle. They had fought pirates before, but these were different, more experienced, more cruel. Her hands trembled not from cowardice, but from the overwhelming realization of the odds stacked against her people. Captain Longbeard, a veteran of the seas, saw not human lives, but gold. To him, these dark-skinned foreigners were rare and precious cargo. He ordered his men to take them alive, unaware that he was about to provoke the wrath of the most dangerous man in the continent. The battle was brutal. Lucia, exhausted and wounded from months of constant struggle, was pushed to her absolute limit. As she lay on the cold deck, staring up at her tormentor, her brothers watched in horror, the scene unfolding like a slow-motion tragedy. Just as the pirate prepared to strike the final, devastating blow, reality bent. A thick, surreal pink smoke engulfed the ships, blinding the attackers and silencing the clamor of steel. The pirates, confused and superstitious, could only watch in terror as a shadow appeared from the mist. The savior had arrived. Landon stepped out of the impossible fog, his presence casting a pall of dread over the pirate fleet. When he spoke in their native Roma, the effect was immediate. The desperate travelers recognized him instantly as the one from their visions. The pirates initially mocked the single intruder. They commanded a fleet of 5 ships and hundreds of warriors. They could not comprehend the threat one man posed. They did not understand that they were not fighting a human, but a force of nature equipped with technology centuries ahead of them. Landon moved like a phantom. Every shot from his suppressed weapon was a death sentence, delivered with absolute chilling efficiency. The pirates fell in waves, their confusion turning to utter, primal panic as their numbers dwindled under the hail of silent, invisible projectiles. Using his lethality to his advantage, Landon fashioned a barricade from the bodies of the fallen, turning the very deck of the ship into a fortress to shield Lucia and her crew. He fought not just to kill, but to control the battlefield entirely. High above the carnage, Longbeard clutched the railings in shock. His bravado crumbled as he realized his men were being dismantled by a single individual. The prestige of his pirate empire, built on decades of blood, was being erased in mere minutes. Landon pursued the leader directly. Jumping onto the flagship, he entered the lion's den, his weapons barking in rhythmic bursts. The pirates, terrified of this unstoppable assassin, began to break ranks, their desire for treasure replaced by a desperate, selfish need to survive. Broken and terrified, the pirate captain abandoned his crew, scurrying toward the safety of his secret compartment like a rat. He was a man who had commanded thousands, yet now he was reduced to a sniveling coward, praying that his hidden bolt hole would save him from the Reaper in black. Landon knew the captain was nearby. He stalked the room with calculated patience, playing a psychological game that terrified the hidden man. The floorboards creaked. The hunter had found his prey. With a swift movement, he pried the hiding place open, exposing the cowering pirate. Channeling a character from his favorite film, Landon played with the pirate's psyche, repeating the iconic line about a father's death. The psychological torture was far more effective than any physical blow, stripping away the pirate's last vestiges of dignity. Humiliation followed. Landon roped the pirate leader, forcing him to hop back to the deck in front of his surviving crew. It was a calculated display of dominance, ensuring that the Pirate Association's reputation would be permanently scarred by this single, decisive defeat. When the mask finally came off, the reaction was explosive. The travelers didn't just see a savior, they saw the fulfillment of their ancient prophecies. They wept and prayed, their faith in the divine connection between Landon and their survival solidified beyond any doubt. With the pirates neutralized and the travelers safe, Landon handed the wealth over to his new allies. He sent them toward Baymard with instructions for a safe harbor, then vanished into the sunset on his own vessel, already preparing for the arrival of his honored guests. The capital was a whirlwind of activity. Landon had 2 days to prepare, and his staff worked with the discipline of a well-oiled machine. From linguistic experts to culinary artists, every detail was polished to show the world the true height of Baymardian civilization. Landon personally thanked his staff, who viewed their work not as labor, but as a prestigious honor. In Baymard, even the help was treated with respect and dignity, creating a loyal, hard-working force that stood ready to welcome the royal guests from Ramain. The day of the arrival finally dawned. Thousands gathered at the docks, their hearts pounding in anticipation. When the fleet arrived, the atmosphere was electric. The sheer scale of the reception served as a powerful statement to the Zalipnian royals of their new alliance. Stepping onto the red carpet, the Zalipnians were overwhelmed. The city's clean lines, the majestic palace, and the genuine excitement of the crowd were worlds apart from the harsh, lawless seas they had traversed. They felt, for the first time in years, completely safe. The reunion on the palace steps was warm and historic. Landon welcomed his guests into the heart of his empire, forging a bond that would soon be cemented in treaties and shared goals. The dark journey had reached its end, replaced by the dawn of a new era. That evening, the guests were ushered into their luxury suites. The comfort of the beds, the modern technology, and the sheer abundance of resources were a revelation. Lucia and her brothers, separated by walls but linked by technology, shared their wonder over the room phones. While his guests found peace, Landon discovered a new threat. A report from Tariq unveiled the cruelty of his latest enemy, a psychopath named Marlowe Jones, the baker. The system issued a deadly ultimatum, forcing Landon into yet another high-stakes game where failure meant death. Landon Barn, the mastermind of Baymard, felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. Burdened by a system that dictated his every move, he grappled with the relentless demands of empire building, military missions, and the looming deadline of his next journey to Dayforus. Far away from Baymard lay Magoon Island. A massive, lawless expanse ruled by the most dangerous pirate captains under the shadow of a global organization. The island was alive with the crude festivities of pirates, oblivious to the fact that they were being observed from the periphery of their dark, swampy territory. A senior pirate teased the younger men, planting a seed of dread by whispering the name of a man so legendary and terrifying that few dared to speak it aloud: the Baker. Beneath the surface of the island, in the chilling darkness, the man known as the Baker began his gruesome interrogation of a double agent. Marlowe Jones, brother to the pirate leader, was no ordinary criminal. He was a monster who viewed torture as an art form, carving his victims with the precision of a pastry chef. After the bloodletting, the cannibalistic Baker sat down for his meal, pondering the strategic failures that had led to the Temple of Dragmas attacking his interests in Tariq. Ratcliffe, the devoted and lethal butler, discussed the missing slave shipments with his master, blaming the interference of the temple for their recent troubles. Back in Baymard, the strategic gears were turning. Landon and his advisors finalized the silent infiltration plan, determined to eliminate the Baker without alerting the entire pirate organization. The warden Mitchin, now part of the strike force, hungered for the chance to confront the monster who had brought so much chaos to the Pino continent. Elsewhere in the Gentle Breeze estate, a captured queen faced the cruel machinations of the treacherous Duchess Philippa, who hid her venomous heart behind a mask of fragility. Philippa, a pawn of the temple, reveled in her cruelty, believing her path to power was secured now that King Sirius MacLean was thought to be dead. As Landon worked to manage the wild, dangerous creatures in his new territories, he simultaneously finalized the preparations for the final, decisive voyage to Magoon Island. The fleet departed under the shroud of darkness, racing against time to reach the island before the Baker could commit further atrocities. Landon stood on the deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon, fully aware that this mission would require every ounce of his ingenuity, as he was heading into the unknown. The air forces ascended silently, scouting the island's terrain to mark the locations of the enemy camps and provide the ground team with the tactical advantage they needed. The pirates below, ignorant of modern technology, misinterpreted the balloons as magical omens, sparking wild theories among the drunken, rowdy crews. Under the cover of night, the strike force utilized the underwater boats to reach the shoreline undetected, shedding their gear to prepare for the final approach. Warden Mitchin led the vanguard, his raw strength and discipline making short work of the perimeter guards before they could even sound the alarm. Panic spread through the camp like wildfire as the pirates began to fall without a sound, their minds filled with superstitious dread regarding cursed treasures and phantom attackers. The Baker attempted to slip away into the forest, his heart heavy with the realization that he was being hunted not by the temple, but by a force he had never encountered before. A fierce clash erupted between the warden and the Baker's loyal servants, the air crackling with the intensity of elite combatants locked in a struggle for survival. In a moment of desperation, the Baker unleashed a toxic powder, hoping to blind the formidable warden and buy himself enough time to vanish into the deep, unforgiving woods. Though temporarily blinded, the warden's spirit remained unbroken. He channeled his inner focus, turning his disadvantage into a trial of resolve while his target escaped into the shadows of the island's treacherous heart. Landon, watching from the distance, ensured that the Baker could not escape. The trap was set, and even if the beast had slipped momentarily, his end was now written in stone. The Baker plunged into the deadly forest, unaware that he was not running to safety, but to a deeper layer of the trap set by his unseen adversary. The hunt was far from over. As the warden steadied himself, the resolve to drag his prey into the light became absolute, for tonight, the Baker would finally learn the cost of his sins. In the deep, treacherous forests of the pirate-infested island, fear reigned supreme. Among the chaos of 15,000 scrambling pirates, Marlowe and Ratcliffe sought to survive, hiding among the masses to escape the encroaching threat of the Baymardians. The pair acted with ruthless efficiency. By neutralizing two pirates who mirrored their own stature, they secured the perfect disguises, successfully blending back into the panicked crowd while shielding their true identities from prying eyes. While the panicked pirates rushed blindly, Marlowe and Ratcliffe maintained their composure. They watched with cold detachment as nature itself claimed the lives of those foolish enough to let their guard down in the deep, deadly forest. A deep, primal grunting shattered the silence of the forest, signaling that something far more dangerous than simple traps awaited. Creatures of the deep wild were beginning to circle, hungry for the flesh of the lost intruders. The predators revealed themselves, the Gentors, massive, aggressive beasts with leopard-like frames and lethal, flower-like neck appendages that could spray paralyzing toxins. To the pirates, these were no longer just animals, but harbingers of death. Confidence turned to defiance as Marlowe faced the beast head-on. With a single, brutal movement, he swatted the creature aside, leaving the predator wounded and stunned, while the other Gentors watched in silent, predatory judgment. As the Gentors descended upon the remaining pirates, Marlowe and Ratcliffe seized the opportunity to escape. They used the screams of the dying as their cover, slipping deeper into the forest, only to find themselves running straight into their worst nightmare. Fate was cruel. Standing before them was Mitchin, the warden who had haunted their every move. Despite their masks and disguises, the hunter had found his prey, and his eyes burned with a singular, terrifying purpose. The battle erupted with a thunderous impact. Mitchin's strength was nothing short of monstrous, turning the ground to dust with a single strike. Marlowe realized too late that the man before him had been holding back during their last encounter. Marlowe was overwhelmed, his body battered, and his resolve crumbling under Mitchin's relentless barrage. He was treated not like an equal combatant, but like a test subject for the warden's overwhelming martial prowess. Driven by desperation, Marlowe offered a fortune in bribes, his pride shattered alongside his bones. He pleaded with the warden, failing to realize that his captor served a power far beyond the greed of common mercenaries. The charade ended with a sharp blow to the skull. Mitchin secured the primary target, his voice steady as he confirmed the capture. The hunt was over, and the prisoners were destined for the confines of the ship's deepest cells. The true shock came when the diminutive Winnie easily hoisted the massive Ratcliffe onto her shoulders. The onlookers watched in sheer disbelief. The girl's delicate appearance hid a strength that defied the laws of nature itself. As the island was secured, Landon moved to the dungeons to personally oversee the interrogation. He sought not to torture, but to separate the victims from the monsters, preparing the freed slaves for their new lives away from the pirate scourge. With the island cleared, the treasures seized, and the innocents freed, Landon prepared to return home. The mission was a resounding success, yet his thoughts remained fixed on the promise of the system's impending reward. Miles away, in a hidden estate, the atmosphere was far darker. Captured nobles, stripped of their power and dignity, fought like animals over remnants of food, their spirits broken under the weight of their miserable imprisonment. A masked man arrived, playing the role of a savior. He whispered promises of rescue to the desperate men, orchestrating a cruel game that would lead them directly into a trap of psychological torment. The path to freedom led only to a dead end. As they stepped into the courtyard, hundreds of armed guards swarmed them, the masked figure shedding his facade to reveal that this entire escape was merely a stage for their final judgment. The mastermind behind the suffering revealed himself, a figure known simply as Death. He savored the broken expressions of his captives, finding joy in the cruelty he inflicted, indifferent to their pleas for mercy. In the empire of Corona, the tide was turning. Morak, a corrupt city lord fueled by arrogance and protected by his deceased benefactor Nopline, received his long-awaited dismissal. His world of greed and cruelty was finally beginning to crumble. Morak attempted to flee with his stolen fortune, but he found his escape blocked by the forces of justice. Santa, a man of unique stature and lethal skill, stood ready to ensure the criminal lord finally faced the consequences of his actions. The battle was swift. Morak underestimated his opponent, only to realize that beneath the plump exterior lay a warrior forged by the relentless training of his bride and her formidable family. Justice was served with each ringing strike. Returning home, Landon finally saw the notification he had been waiting for. The reward was not gold, but knowledge, forensic facial reconstruction. It was a tool that would allow him to uncover the truths hidden by death itself. Back at the prison, the hierarchy was in flux. Whitebeard, shorn of his signature beard, scrambled to recruit the newly captured captains. his mind fixated on overthrowing the current leaders of the prison jungle, Illy and Connor. With the island conflict settling, Landon turned his attention to the Navora fashion show. The spectacle was a marvel of design, showcasing the pinnacle of Baymardian industry and creativity, captivating everyone present. However, peace was short-lived. Landon's respite was shattered by the return of the three musketeers, the elderly gardeners whose penchant for over-the-top drama and bizarre competitions never failed to test his sanity. Despite the chaos of his duties, a new chapter began. Mother Kim was pregnant. Amidst the schemes of empires and the shadows of death, the news of a coming child brought a rare moment of genuine, familial light into Landon's world. Somewhere on the dark, still waters surrounding Baymard, the ambitious painter and sculptor Marcus Perquo broods in his chambers, his mind filled with fury toward the ruler of Baymard, Landon Barn, as he prepares to demand compliance from the upstart king. The next morning, the tranquility of Baymard is shattered when Landon Barn receives word of a loud commotion at the palace gates, where a self-proclaimed genius artist has arrived to force a confrontation. Landon approaches the gate to find Marcus Perquo, a man whose fame spans 3 continents, waiting with 100 men, radiating the arrogance of one who believes he stands above monarchs. Confident in his status and his private army, Marcus sneers at the Baymardian guards, fully expecting the young king to grovel at his feet for the sake of his prestigious autograph. Landon remains unmoved by the painter's haughty demands, calmly questioning why such a supposedly learned aristocrat has abandoned his manners the moment he stepped foot into Baymard. With a flick of his wrist and a hidden pebble, Landon cuts short the painter's tirade, forcing the arrogant man to his knees right before the palace gates. As Marcus forces himself to his feet, a dark realization sets in. The witnesses to his public humiliation must be silenced, or his influence across the continent will shatter like glass. Marcus is led into the audience hall, where the sheer ethereal beauty of the palace leaves him trembling with desire to capture the sight on canvas. Yet he forces himself to remain cold, stabbing his own hand to stay focused on his mission. Inside the audience hall, Marcus makes his demands, declaring that the Art Society will no longer tolerate the abominations being taught in Baymard's Academy of Arts and Beauty. The painter attacks Baymard's vibrant, expressive art, labeling everything that doesn't fit their narrow, dark-toned intellectual categories as trash, demanding that Landon cease all production of paint and art supplies. Landon finds their elitism laughable, realizing these people are nothing more than greedy con men terrified that the common folk can now afford quality materials, breaking their long-held monopoly. The Art Society reaches the height of their audacity, demanding that the manufacturing processes for all Baymardian school supplies be handed over to them so they can control the market. Landon's laughter echoes through the hall, joined by his guards and secretaries, leaving Marcus and his men stunned and increasingly enraged at the blatant mockery. Marcus issues a final, chilling threat, comparing the king to a chicken playing in the den of a predator, guaranteeing that the Art Society will tear him down just as they allegedly did for others. Landon rises, his aura turning dark and oppressive, instantly silencing the room as he makes his own guarantee, forcing the invaders to their knees through sheer, visceral pressure. The audience hall transforms into a battlefield. Landon dismantles the opposition with ease, while his secretaries prove that they are far from the defenseless desk workers Marcus expected. Landon turns the chaos into a grim dance, using a terrified Marcus as a shield and weapon against his remaining guards, proving that the painter's arrogance was no match for the king's prowess. With his ego shattered and his men unconscious, Marcus begs for mercy, swearing he will never return, all while plotting his vengeance in the back of his mind. After stripping them of their treasures as compensation, Landon has the battered men dumped back onto their ships, banning them from Baymard forever, while unbeknownst to them, he marks them with tracking systems. The sight of the once proud painter wiggling like a worm to protect his loot becomes a spectacle for local children, unknowingly becoming the target of the town's ridicule. With the trash removed, Landon turns his focus to his allies, celebrating the completion of ports across Arcadina and Tariq, marking a new era of rapid trade and travel. But a new, creeping nightmare threatens the continent. Invasive tumbleweeds, greedy vampire plants that choke out farmlands and ignite like fuel during storms, now spreading across the neighboring empires. As the kingdom readies its defenses, Landon prepares for a perilous journey to secure the throne for Henry, unaware that dark forces from the Temple of Dragmas and the scheming Eliza are already converging on the path ahead. Far away on the open seas, a temple primate trusts in a legendary ring of victory, oblivious to the fact that his base of operations will be rubble by the time he arrives. Deep in Arcadina, the vengeful Eliza enforces her iron rule over a terrified village, dreaming of returning to the palace as Queen Mother while her hired assassins prepare to strike. Landon's forces reach the hidden fortress in the forest, reuniting with Henry, whose determination to reclaim his throne is fueled by the tragic memories of his grandfather's death at the hands of the royals. Inside the impenetrable base, the final stage of the rebellion begins, as they map out the brutal customs and tyrannical councils of Despised that must be dismantled to secure a future for the people. The empire stood at a precipice, shackled by archaic laws that demanded cruelty over compassion. Landon Barn, a man from a world of modern logic, had joined forces with Henry to dismantle the rot at the heart of Despised. They sought to end the reign of fear, preparing to challenge not just a system, but the very brothers and uncles who would burn the empire to ash to claim its throne. Landon revealed the horrific truth of the chimney cleaners, a secret hidden behind the architecture of Despised. These children were mere tools, pushed into suffocating, soot-filled labyrinths until their bodies broke. The cruelty was absolute, a reality Landon refused to let continue, promising a future where humanity was valued above convenience. Far from the reforms of the UN, the royal palace of Despised was a den of vipers. Prince Ulrich, the crown prince, sat in his cold, lavish isolation, feeding on his ambition while his father lay dying. He was a man of steel who viewed the world as his chessboard, waiting for the final moment to solidify his grip on the throne. Meanwhile, the volatile Winston Tudor burned with a different fire. Humiliated and furious, he lashed out at everything in his path, his lack of restraint defining his dangerous, chaotic character. He saw himself as the true heir, fueled by envy and a thirst for violence that terrified his own retinue. As night fell, the time for diplomacy vanished. Operation Midnight was set in motion. With precision that contrasted sharply with the chaotic greed of the princes, Landon and his forces prepared to strike, moving like shadows under the cover of darkness to secure their foothold in the capital. They took to the skies, defying the limitations of their era. Hovering above the city like silent watchers, they held the key to the empire's fate. The silence of the night was about to be shattered, as the disparate forces of Despised were finally forced to face the consequence of their cruelty. On the ground, the rescue mission began. Vincent and his unit moved through the enemy camp with calculated audacity, blending into the crowd of arrogant knights. They weren't just soldiers, they were liberators, carefully extracting the women who had been trapped in a life of perpetual agony. The plan was simple but daring, turn the enemy's own arrogance against them. As the women donned disguises, the soldiers created a diversion, slipping past the gate as if they belonged. The first stage of their mission was nearing its end, and the camp was about to ignite. Phase 2 was the thunder of war. The silence of the abandoned merchant post was ripped apart by the roar of explosions. Landon's artillery tore through the defenses, shattering the false sense of security the princes had built. The pride of the Despised knights was reduced to smoke and debris. Commander Holt stood amidst the devastation, watching his forces vanish under an onslaught they couldn't even see. He had expected a battle of swords and valor, but instead, he was met with the cold, absolute superiority of Baymardian technology. His confusion quickly turned to raw, primal terror. The iron beasts rolled forward, crushing everything in their path. There was no glory here, only the swift end of an era. The Despised knights, so confident in their martial prowess, were rendered obsolete in minutes. The pride they held was their undoing, leaving them helpless before an unstoppable force. Holt was lost in the storm of steel and fire, his arrogance dying with him on the cold ground. He had tried to lead to strike back, but he was nothing more than a ghost in the path of the future. The battle of the merchant post was over, and the path to the palace was clear. Operation Midnight had reached its conclusion. The threat outside the city walls was dismantled, and the stage was set for the final act. Landon and Henry surveyed the carnage, knowing that tomorrow would decide whether Dayfrus would rise or fall under the weight of its own greed. Inside the palace, the sun rose on the final hours of King Julius. He was a shadow of a man, his life drained away by poison he never suspected. Around him, the princes and princesses circled, their tears nothing more than a performance for the audience of nobles who stood ready to shift their allegiance. With his final breath, the king spoke, shattering the dreams of those who thought themselves chosen. He named Ulrich as his heir, a verdict that acted as the final match dropped into a powder keg. The room, already stifling, became a powder keg waiting for a single spark. King Julius Tudor was gone. The transition of power had begun, and with it, the facade of peace collapsed instantly. The mourning was short-lived. In this palace, sorrow was a luxury no one could afford, as the fight for the crown began even before his body was cold. The masquerade ended the moment the king passed, the hall filled with the tension of impending slaughter. Ulrich, Winston, Bonnevier, and the dukes all stood their ground, their forces emerging from the shadows. The struggle for the throne would not be a debate, but a war to the death. The brothers turned their blades on one another, their shared bloodline meaningless against the lure of the crown. Ulrich and Winston moved with the desperation of men who knew only one could survive. It was no longer a struggle for succession, but a fratricidal frenzy that mirrored the empire's own internal decay. One by one, the contenders fell. Duke Bulkington, the old viper, was struck down by his own nephew, his life ending on the cold marble floor. The old guard was being purged by the very youth they had tried to manipulate, proving that in Dayfrus, power favored the most ruthless, not the most entitled. Eldora, having dreamed of ruling, found herself trapped in a nightmare of her own making. She had underestimated the brutality of the men she called brothers, and her incompetence in the face of true violence left her vulnerable. Her ambition, once sharp, was now a dull, useless blade. Eldora fell, but she did not go alone. Her final arrow found its mark, dragging Joffrey into the abyss with her. One after another, the heirs were struck down, turning the Grand Hall into a tomb for a dynasty that had devoured itself from the inside out. Only 3 remained, Ulrich, Winston, and Duke Oges. The air was thick with the copper scent of blood, and the hall was littered with the bodies of those who once sought the crown. The end was near, and only the final blow would decide who would inherit the throne of a crumbling empire. The cycle of violence was reaching its conclusion. No more schemes, no more feigned loyalty, only the final, brutal reckoning. The empire's future depended on the survival of one, and as they stood among the ruins, the true nature of their bloodline was exposed for all to see. While the princes destroyed themselves, the city waited. They didn't know that the very walls that held their authority were becoming the site of their final, bloody testament. The royal family of Dayfrus was a cancer, and this day was its long-overdue surgery, executed by the heirs themselves. Landon watched from the perimeter, a silent witness to the self-destruction of the Tudor house. He had not needed to strike the final blow. He simply provided the circumstances for the tigers to devour one another. It was almost time to step into the wreckage and begin the task of rebuilding. The hall fell silent, the screams replaced by the hollow echo of steel on stone. The Game of Thrones was nearing its finish, but the winner would find that the chair they sought was now surrounded by those who had come to build a better world. The era of the Tudors had ended, and the era of the United Nations had begun. The battle for the throne reached its boiling point. Within the suffocating walls of the palace, the air was thick with the scent of iron and betrayal. Ulrich and Winston found themselves locked in a dance of death, both exhausted, both desperate, and both blinded by their own arrogance as they ignored the true threat lurking in the shadows. Betrayal is a blade that cuts both ways. As Duke Oges fell, a victim of his own nephew's cold-blooded ambition, the battlefield shifted. Winston felt the surge of a killer's high, not realizing that he was merely trading one enemy for a much more dangerous fate. But Ulrich had been playing a different game entirely. For weeks, he had feigned exhaustion, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He looked at Winston, not with fear, but with the chilling patience of a predator who had already predicted his brother's pathetic demise. Just as the final blow was about to be struck, the world seemed to freeze. Henry and the mysterious masked Landon sauntered into the carnage. They weren't fighting, they were observing, and their arrival shattered the illusion that the throne was still up for grabs. The revelation was swift and brutal. Henry hadn't been hiding, he had been busy dismantling their support systems. With a flick of his hand, he unveiled the proof of his victory, the heads of every commander loyal to his brothers. The war was over before they even realized it had begun. Realizing their downfall, Ulrich and Winston broke into a frantic escape. They navigated the labyrinthine, deadly corridors of the building of absolute death, hoping their knowledge of the secret passages would save them. But the building had other plans. The pursuit was relentless. Landon displayed superhuman agility, moving with a speed that defied logic. He wasn't just running, he was closing the distance, his eyes locked onto his targets like a heat-seeking missile. The brothers had nowhere left to run. Elsewhere, Vlad and his squad encountered the building's lethal traps. Greasy stairs and snapping floorboards claimed lives, but they held firm. With the discipline of veteran soldiers, they secured their descent, proving that the absolute death of this building was no match for their technology. Below the ground, the horror unfolded. Vlad found himself trapped in a pit filled with starving beasts. It was a fight for survival, but even in the belly of the beast, Landon's soldiers brought order to chaos, utilizing their advanced gear to survive the impossible. The final confrontation was swift. Landon intercepted Ulrich in a hallway, delivering a blow so precise and powerful that it shattered the prince's will to resist. There was no grand speech, no mercy, only the cold, hard reality of defeat. With his brothers broken and his enemies scattered, Henry stood as the sole victor. The power struggle that had ravaged the kingdom was over. The crown was within his grasp, and the true ruler of the empire had finally emerged from the shadows. Victory brought clarity. The system confirmed the success of Landon's mission. The temple of Dragmas was uprooted. But a shadow remained. The elusive leader was still at large, plotting in the darkness. The war for the throne was over, but the war against the shadows had just begun. The morning after, the palace was swarmed by furious mothers. Lillian and Kyla, driven by the primal need to save their sons, stormed the grand hall like vengeful goddesses. They weren't there to negotiate. They were there to reclaim what they believed was theirs. But they were too late. Henry sat on the throne not as a weak prince but as a king in waiting. He watched the queens with a calm that infuriated them further. He had the power, he had the hostages, and he had the final say in their sons' fates. The sight of their broken sons brought the queens to their knees. Ulrich and Winston, once proud princes, were shadows of their former selves. The realization hit them hard. The power they had fought so viciously to preserve had crumbled into dust. The final humiliation was the letter left behind. The masked man had vanished, and with him the princes. The queens, overwhelmed by their own rage and desperation, collapsed as the truth set in. Their sons were gone, taken to a land they could never easily reach. While the empires burned with intrigue, life in Baymard continued its steady march of progress. Momo sat in his classroom, blissfully unaware of the wars abroad, discussing the latest episode of the Power Rangers with his friends. It was a world where the biggest problem was a fictional villain, not a real king. In Baymard, the drama was of a different sort. When Natsu innocently accepted a lunchbox from a classmate, he was promptly kidnapped by his jealous peers. The absurdity of it all was a testament to the peace Landon had built in his home city. Yet evil does not sleep. Far away, Master K, the leader of the Temple of Dragmas, sat in his lair, seething. His base was destroyed, his secrets exposed. He didn't know who had struck him, but he vowed to paint the continent in blood to find them. Back in Corona, the festive mood was infectious. The entire capital was preparing for the wedding of the century. Queen Penelope and Duke Benjamin Hamilton were the center of the nation's joy. It was a moment of light before the next storm. The wedding logistics were a marvel of Baymardian engineering. From solar-powered cameras to meticulously planned decor, the team from Baymard treated the wedding like a high-stakes military operation, ensuring every detail was perfect for the upcoming televised broadcast. Poor Penelope was the only one who wasn't having fun. Trapped in a changing room by her relentless friends, she was subjected to a barrage of dresses and fittings. She wanted to fight in the battlefield, not in a boutique. Even the strongest men knew when to retreat. Seeing Penelope in the throes of a wedding-induced meltdown, Adrian, Carmelo, and Santa opted for survival over chivalry, silently fleeing the scene before they could get caught in the crossfire. Progress was everywhere, even in the hotels. The Bulong Hotel had evolved into a standard-bearer for Coronian hospitality, all thanks to Baymardian internships. It was a symbol of how one city's ambition could rewrite the lifestyle of an entire nation. But not everyone celebrated. Prince Sky watched the festive preparations with poisonous envy. He felt that the world was celebrating a future that was rightfully his. His resentment simmered, waiting for the right moment to strike back at the people who had stolen his spotlight. The pieces were moving into place. Dayforus had been subdued, the temple was crumbling, and the wedding of the century was mere hours away. Landon watched the sun set over the horizon, knowing that the most important day of the year was about to begin. In the heart of the capital, tension simmered beneath the surface of the grand wedding preparations. Prince Sky, bitter and disgraced, plotted with his secret allies, the mysterious Temple of Dragmas, to turn a day of celebration into a theater of carnage. The arrival of the temple's elite enforcers marked the beginning of a dark conspiracy. These warriors were not just muscle. They were instruments of a cult that sought to rewrite the fate of the empire through blood. Yao, a primate of the temple, exuded a chilling confidence. He dismissed the prince's doubts with the ease of a master manipulator, revealing that their target list was not limited to the bride, but also to the most powerful kings in attendance. The prince was forced to accept the terms. If he wanted the throne, he would have to strike at the man who represented everything the temple feared, Landon Barn. The stage for betrayal was set. Meanwhile, the mood in the palace was one of jubilant anticipation. Monarchs and nobles from across the continent shared rare vintages, unaware that the shadows were gathering just beyond the city walls. Even amidst the grandeur, the petty squabbles of noble families provided light-hearted relief. King Adrian's frustration over his son's thievery of fine wine was a momentary reprieve from the serious business of statecraft. Boundaries of language and culture were blurring as the diverse group of allies grew closer. Learning the common tongue had become a badge of honor for men like King Michiel, who saw it as proof of their progress. The atmosphere shifted as the soldier burst in. The entourage had arrived, but the man everyone was truly waiting for remained conspicuously absent, having wandered into the woods. Landon Barn, the mastermind of Baymard, was not one for grand entrances when there was a war to be watched. He stalked the forest, his thermal goggles detecting the hidden watchmen of his enemies. Landon's system, a complex web of data, worked to amplify the whispers of his enemies. With a smirk, he listened to their foolish plans, knowing exactly what fate awaited them. Despite his lethal mission, Landon's heart remained firmly rooted in charity. He provided for the suffering, a reminder that his power was ultimately meant to shield, not just conquer. The morning of September 27th brought with it the most anticipated wedding in the empire. Corona transformed into a hub of excitement, its streets cleaned and decorated to perfection for the royal occasion. The scale of the wedding was unprecedented, with Baymardian tech bringing news coverage to every corner. For the citizens, this was more than a wedding. It was a glimpse into a new, modern era. Reporters Jesse Aluya and Ryan Globa kept the crowd entertained, their witty commentary turning the wedding into a spectacle of national pride. The excitement was palpable as the guests began to arrive. The arrival of Duke Benjamin Hamilton and his entourage in high-end Baymardian vehicles sent the fans into a frenzy. It was a parade of power, style, and absolute luxury. Then the moment of truth arrived. Penelope stepped out and the crowd held its breath. She wore a masterpiece that defied tradition, a gown with a massive front slit revealing elegant white pants, matching her warrior spirit perfectly. King Carmelo looked upon his daughter with a heart full of pride and sorrow. Penelope, his daddy's girl, had grown into a queen, and though he was reluctant to let her go, he knew she was ready for the world. As the sacred vows were exchanged, Santa was breathless. The ceremony was a blend of tradition and modernity, a beautiful testament to a love that had stood the test of trials and training. But peace is fragile. The moment the ceremony ended, the doors of the dome were forced open. The temple's assassins had arrived, turning the wedding square into a battlefield. Penelope did not panic. With a swift movement, she ripped her gown to fight, her eyes locking onto the man who dared to disturb her wedding. The reunion with Prince Sky would be violent. Landon had anticipated this. From the rafters, his elite soldiers dropped down like vengeful spirits. The ambushers were now the ambushed, and the dome rang with the sound of steel and gunfire. Yao stood before Landon, posturing with the arrogance of the invincible. He knew not that he faced a man who didn't care for long-winded backstories, only for ending the threat swiftly. Penelope took her revenge on Sky with the grace of a warrior. Every strike, every maneuver was a message. He was nothing, and her wedding would not be tarnished by his petty schemes. Landon's power was absolute. He toyed with the primate, dismantling his defenses with the cold precision of a machine. The final boss of the temple was quickly becoming a lesson in humility. The battle turned rapidly. As news of the temple's base destruction reached Yao, he crumbled mentally, his reality shattered by the overwhelming force of the Baymardians. The invasion had failed. Even after the blood was washed away, the war continued, the war for wedding perfection. Lucy, in her element, commanded the men to clean themselves up, ensuring the bride's day remained legendary. With the skies cleared and the invaders defeated, the celebration soared to new heights. The hot air balloons drifted over the city, a symbol of freedom and a life beginning anew for the happy couple. The night concluded with a spectacle of light and joy. The wedding was complete, a memory etched into history, while in the shadows new threats from afar began to stir, marking the start of a dangerous new chapter. The assassins from the Arcadina Guild, having transmigrated through the treacherous shadows of Baymard, now find their mission faltering against an impossible, electrified fence. Their tweezers, meant for precision, are now their only lifeline as they realize the terrifying patterns of the prison's demonic lights. Despite the physical torment, the assassins push forward, fueled by a mix of fear and professional pride. Reaching the top, they are met with a secondary trap, barbed metal mesh that slices into their flesh, heightening their growing disdain for the Baymardian prison system. Success seems within their grasp as they slip into the prison's inner corridor. Yet, unknown to the intruders, a predator watches from the void, a pair of fierce eyes tracking their every step with silent, lethal vigilance. Their retreat is severed in a heartbeat. Heavy metal bars erupt from the ground, locking the assassins inside a vast, circular arena. The warmth of the night vanishes, replaced by a cold, suffocating tension. Brilliant floodlights suddenly blind them, exposing their positions. The circular space is vast and empty, but as they scan their surroundings, the walls begin to shift and open like complex mechanical puzzles. The mechanical walls slide away to reveal an army of combat-trained dogs. The assassins, initially expecting guards, now face an animal force, their pride wounded as they realize they are being hunted by the prison's own canine unit. At the center stands Boss Dog, a creature of immense strength and disciplined intellect. A product of rigorous training with Warden Mitchin, the dog gestures with a commanding paw, directing his pack to encircle the intruders. The battle begins with a roar. Boss Dog lunges with the speed and precision of a predator, catching Ling Pong off guard and instantly overwhelming the assassin's attempt at defense. Humiliated and in pain, Ling Pong struggles to comprehend the sheer strength of his opponent. The dog slaps him across the mask with such force that several teeth are knocked out, leaving the assassin dazed and trembling. The combat is one-sided. Every move Ling Pong makes is countered by the beast, who treats the trained assassin like a common punching bag, spinning and slamming him into the cold prison floor. The assassins break free and scramble back to the fence to escape, only to face a final horror. The electrified fence traps them, its voltage surging through their bodies, rendering them unconscious in a sudden, violent display of Baymardian power. Warden Mitchin arrives to survey the aftermath. He finds his canine force standing in crisp formation, waiting for his command, as the fallen intruders lie broken and silent upon the ground. Mitchin confronts the last lingering threat. His gaze alone is enough to silence the groaning men. His murderous aura, sharpened by years of managing the world's most dangerous prison, humbles the assassins instantly. With the threat neutralized, Mitchin orders the cleanup. The transition sector will serve as their new home, where they will soon find that Baymard's interrogation methods are far more effective than any blade. In the distant Dafforan Empire, the balance of power shifts. Alexander Lockhart, a man whose influence spans continents, sits upon his throne, his mind consumed by the mysterious disappearance of his son. Alexander's rage boils beneath a calm exterior. He demands the truth from his subordinates, who know that one wrong word will seal their fate in this room of shadows and gold. The hall echoes with the sound of steel. Alexander strikes without mercy, his patience exhausted by the ineptitude of those tasked with guarding the crown prince's secrets. Information trickles in. The prince has not perished, but is active in Corona, seeking to claim the throne and expand Vaynira's influence. Alexander's fury turns into a calculated, dangerous pride. The world is a web of scams. Morgany holds the keys to the sea, forcing every merchant to pay a toll or face destruction, a cycle of greed that Alexander now seeks to shatter through his son's ambition. Alexander sees the opportunity. The Pino continent, backward and unrefined, is ripe for the taking. His son's marriage into the Coronian royal line is the perfect wedge to split the continent apart. Yet news of his son's defeat by the barbaric princess Penelope ignites a new, darker impulse. Alexander will not suffer a daughter-in-law who defies his blood. He demands her head on a platter. Back in Baymard, the winds of change are calm but steady. Landon's return coincides with the successful launch of the new trade routes, as ships traverse the seas freely, challenging the old order. Landon observes his city. Vending machines, solar-powered marvels, stand as symbols of his reign's convenience. The economy thrives, and the citizens enjoy a standard of living the rest of the world cannot imagine. For the students, these machines are a miracle. No longer trapped in lines, they find time to study, to learn, and to grow within the heart of the Academy of Atmospheric and Hertfilian Sciences. Landon takes the podium. He teaches not just science, but the language of the planet itself. His students, hailing from all corners of the Pino continent, watch him with a reverence reserved for legends. Far away, Eliza's frustration reaches a breaking point. The failure of her assassins leaves her stranded in fear, her plans crumbling. She prepares to flee, but the shadow of Baymard is already closing in. She stares out at the empire that humiliated her, her heart hardened by malice. The game is far from over. Eliza will retreat to fight again, for her thirst for vengeance is as deep as the seas themselves. In the bustling city of Profuse, Baron Cain returned from his cowardly exile, only to find the power structure of his domain shattered. His hatred for the change he saw in the streets was only eclipsed by his fear of the retribution that awaited him following the events in the capital. With his influence crumbling and his secret hideouts destroyed by unknown forces, Cain realized he had no choice. To survive and reclaim his lost dream of empire, he turned his eyes toward the dark promise of the Supreme Brotherhood. Miles away in the heart of Baymard, life moved at a different pace. Landon, the father of modern medicine, found himself pulled into yet another medical mystery that threatened to baffle the most learned minds of his era. The patient, Andrew McLouth, presented a bizarre and painful case. His swollen, inflamed toe was only the beginning of a lifelong struggle caused by gluttony and ignorance, yet he remained trapped by his own absurd delusions. Landon listened in disbelief as Andrew described a ridiculous social trend, believing his agonizing illness was actually a badge of status. Science collided with superstition, forcing Landon to navigate the stubborn ego of a man blinded by his own vanity. In a calm and methodical manner, Landon finally diagnosed the condition as gout, a manifestation of the patient's catastrophic lifestyle. The doctors watched in awe as the mystery of the white crystals was unraveled by the brilliance of their master. Despite the clear warning of permanent disfigurement and organ failure, Andrew clung to his madness. He rejected the cure, obsessed with a vanity that threatened his very existence, leaving Landon with no choice but to respect the patient's fatal decision. While medical dramas unfolded, a darker threat silently slipped into Baymard. The port, a testament to Baymard's rapid technological advancement, became the entry point for 3 lethal shadows with a singular purpose. The assassins were experts in death, yet even they were unsettled by the sheer ingenuity of the city they now walked. They marked their target, the royal teacher Winnie Elms, unaware that their target resided within the impenetrable walls of the palace. In the depths of Irongate Prison, a different kind of war was brewing. For Prince Barn, this place was not a cage but a kingdom, a jungle where he maintained his iron grip on the other inmates. He sat in judgment, observing his rivals, including the shrewd Ulrich Tudor. The prison was a landscape of broken men, and he intended to remain the one constant that no enemy could hope to topple. He demanded answers for an act of sabotage that had seen his men sent to the White Room. With a brutal display of authority, he made it clear that those who challenged his rule would find only suffering. The spy at his feet had no good options. To speak was to invite the wrath of his masters, but to remain silent was to face the unrelenting, demonic rage of the great king himself. He was not a man of patience. He unleashed his pent-up rage, ensuring that the message was received loud and clear. His throne was not for the taking, and his dominance in these halls would remain absolute. While dark shadows and prison kings fought for control, the rest of Baymard was bathed in the light of progress. The arcade center finally opened its doors, igniting a frenzy of excitement across the city. Little Momo and Linda, the self-appointed guardians of Landon's schedule, had ensured he made it on time to the historic launch. The children's energy was infectious, and even the king himself couldn't help but yield to their demands. The interior was a wonderland of color and light. Thousands of machines, from classic pinball to digital marvels, beckoned to the crowds, leaving even the most stoic onlookers speechless at the technological marvel before them. Momo was lost in the game, the thrill of the chase and the adrenaline of the challenge stirring something new within his soul. Gaming had arrived, and it was clear this would become the heartbeat of a new generation. As the crowds reveled in their newfound digital kingdom, Landon found a moment of peace with his beloved. Yet, even in the midst of this joy, the system's voice hummed in his mind, bringing news of his success. With the missions complete, his rewards were vast and world-changing. From coding to advanced aviation and forensic DNA sequencing, the next leap for Baymard was already taking shape in his mind. The path forward was clear. He would build the planes, the parks, and the institutions that would cement Baymard's legacy for eternity. The dreams of a king were beginning to manifest into reality, one mission at a time. The world slept, but Landon's mind drifted through visions of a future where his people would soar through the clouds. The day had been long, but the morning would bring the challenges of tomorrow. Far from the lights and laughter, the three killers sat in the dark, their resolve hardened. They were still here, they were still watching, and they were still waiting for their window of opportunity. And deep in his own dark corner, Barn contemplated the coming storm. The prison was his, but the world outside was moving, and he would not be left behind when the final reckoning arrived. Baymard was changing, and with it, the destiny of the entire continent. Landon stood at the center of the turning wheel, ready to guide his people into a new, unprecedented age of progress and power. The autumn winds whistle through the ruins of Magoon Island, where a once-thriving pirate base now lies in shattered silence. 2,000 men returned to find their headquarters ravaged, their captain taken, and their world thrown into chaos, leaving them to wonder who could have defied them so brazenly. Four Fingers, the newly appointed leader in his captain's absence, stands amidst the wreckage. A single, ominous note provides the only clue to the disaster, suggesting that the pirate organization's enemies have finally moved to erase them, one base at a time. The crew's future hangs by a thread. With the pirate captain captured and their status plummeting, they face the grim reality of being reassigned to other crews as menials or slaves. Panic sets in as they realize their only hope is to reach headquarters. Amidst the political turmoil, Landon Barn, a transmigrated soul who built the advanced civilization of Baymard from nothing, finds himself forced into a routine checkup by his fiancée, Lucy. Even as he wishes to return to his missions, he observes the strange medical anxieties of his people. Shadows creep through the city as three assassins prepare for a deadly strike. They blend perfectly into the Baymardian populace, their colorful, bubbly face masks hiding the murderous intent brewing beneath, as they plan to end the life of Winnie Elms. With calculated precision, the trio discards their old identities, cycling through sectors to avoid detection. They move through the Baymardian transit system like ghosts, determined to reach Sector C and claim their target, unaware of the trap awaiting them. Mother Winnie, focused on her academic duties, is suddenly thrust into danger as her vehicle screeches to a halt. The assassins reveal themselves, swarming the car, their blades drawn with lethal intent, yet the Duchess remains chillingly calm. The car speeds away, held hostage by men who believe they hold the power. They expect terror, but they receive only indifference. Winnie knows exactly who these men are, and the ghosts of her past in Yawden begin to rise. From his vantage point, Landon monitors the kidnapping via his system. He smiles, knowing that the assassins have gravely underestimated the woman they hold hostage. He chooses to let Winnie orchestrate her own vengeance, testing her growth as a warrior. The veneer of the weak target shatters. With godlike strength, Winnie flips the script, disarming her captors with ease. Years of training and the bitterness of past exile erupt as she finally confronts those sent by her bitter rivals. She is no longer the victim of a political game. She is the hunter. As she systematically dismantles their attempts to harm her, she airs her long-held grievances, turning the hostage situation into a brutal lesson for those who dared to invade her life. The driver, Lipo, witnesses a transformation that defies all expectations. He drives toward the police station, shielding the world from the carnage unfolding in the back, realizing that the Duchess was never the one in danger. With the assassins handled, Landon shifts his focus back to the global chessboard. A new threat emerges: the ballista, a siege weapon created in Morgany. The system tasks him with a new mission: share the design to ensure his allies can survive the coming age. Meanwhile, in the depths of Yawden, the tide turns against the temple. A captured pirate spy is brought before the masked Master K, whose organization is crumbling under the weight of mysterious attacks that have leveled his secret bases across the land. Master K is a man of secrets, his face hidden by a mask, his heart frozen by paranoia. He knows the spy serves the pirate organization, but he seeks information on the unseen enemy that has shattered his influence, threatening his hold on the continent. The dungeon echoes with screams. Master K shows no mercy, his men stripping the spy of his dignity and his limbs. Each crack and groan serves as a testament to the desperate power struggle unfolding in the dark corners of the world. But Master K finds a glimmer of hope: the upcoming United Nations meeting in Baymard. He dreams of using this gathering to seize the city, renaming it after his own temple, unaware that he is walking into a trap set by an enemy he cannot even comprehend. As winter approaches, Baymard prepares for the grand assembly of monarchs. The streets hum with anticipation, and the palace guest buildings fill with the representatives of distant empires, setting the stage for a historical confrontation that will reshape the continent forever. Landon arrives to greet his guests, maintaining the delicate political balance required of a leader. He knows that among the visitors are allies and potential enemies, but he holds the cards of modern technology and tactical superiority close to his chest. In their suite, King Mitchell and his son Astar await their host. The king worries about his son's gluttony and lack of focus, preparing him for the crown that awaits in the spring, while the boy remains blissfully unaware of the looming conflict. Behind closed doors, Landon works to secure the safety of his allies. By arming them with the knowledge of siege weapons, he levels the playing field against the aggressive expansionists of Morgany, fulfilling his mission and earning a new, powerful vision. The world is changing. The age of knights and simple blades is being eclipsed by siege engines and advanced tactics. As Landon walks toward his guests, he knows that the meeting will be more than just diplomacy. It will be the beginning of a new era. With the mission complete, a new perception settles into his mind. Landon can now pierce the darkness, seeing through the shadows where enemies like Master K hide. He is prepared for whatever the night may bring to Baymard. Diplomacy, intrigue, and the shadow of war all converge in Baymard. The monarchs gather, unknowingly standing at the brink of a transformed world. As the sun dips below the horizon, the true game of power begins in earnest. The night is calm, but the storm is approaching. Baymard stands as a beacon of order in a world of chaos. Landon watches the horizon, ready to guide his people through the coming fire, for he knows that destiny is written by those who dare to build the future. After a long-awaited reunion, Landon Barn, the visionary who transmigrated from a modern world to redefine this continent, is greeted by his loyal companions Astar and Michael. Despite his heroic efforts in Tariq, the shadow of the Morgue Association looms over them, threatening the stability of their hard-earned progress. Serious discussions ensue. Landon and Michael pore over secret documents, unveiling the chilling connection between the deceased Knopline and a formidable elite organization known as the Morgues. The realization hits. Barn, Landon's predecessor, was entangled in this web of greed long ago. The historical day has arrived. The first United Nations meeting in the history of Hertphilia commences. Reporters flood the scene, and for 2.5 days, the world's most powerful figures gather to address the poverty, war, and systemic issues plaguing their lands. The opening ceremony features a powerful performance by BNFA Goodwill ambassadors. Their song, "We Are the World," transcends borders, projecting poignant images of change and humanitarian efforts that move the audience to tears, including William's mother, Mona. The emotional resonance of the performance touches everyone. Even the stoic attendees find themselves weeping. Mona, struggling to keep her composure, redirects her embarrassment toward Landon, finding it easier to blame her nephew for the ruined makeup than to confront her own vulnerability. As the days progress, the mood shifts from general debate to grave urgency. On the third day, the cameras are turned off. The assembly goes into a locked-down private session where the leaders finally confront the sinister threats of the temple and the mysterious Morgue organization. The leaders realize the Morgue organization operates like a web, connecting all their regional problems. They contemplate sending spies into the heart of Morgany, but Henry and the others warn that it is an impenetrable fortress, guarded by pirates and absolute secrecy. Despite the daunting challenge, Landon's presence instills hope. He reminds them of their progress and unity. One by one, Lucius, Carmelo, Michiel, and even the skeptical Mona express their unwavering faith in him, solidifying their alliance for the trials ahead. Turning to action, Landon reveals the ballista, a massive, precision-engineered crossbow that could turn the tide of any battle. He presents a hand-drawn, animated projection that illustrates its devastating potential, stunning the leaders who are humbled by his ingenuity. The leaders are energized. William and Sirius immediately begin suggesting tactical enhancements, proposing that they mount these weapons on ships and use them to fire projectiles, including stones and explosive payloads, far surpassing Landon's initial basic design. Meanwhile, the situation in Dayfrus turns catastrophic. Josh and his team, sent to rescue abandoned children, are now being pursued by a massive pirate army through the dark, torrential rain, turning their mission into a high-stakes survival struggle. The boy Josh rescued is not just any child. He is the son of Countess Yanya Shumo, a woman imprisoned by the Morgues for her father's legendary knowledge of ancient weapons. His survival has made him the most wanted person in the entire region. Knowing the danger, Josh orchestrates a desperate escape. He sends his men and the child down the hidden cliff face toward a man-made cave shelter, choosing to stay behind to lure the massive pirate force away from their location. Josh plays a dangerous game of cat and mouse, intentionally slowing his pace to ensure the pursuers follow him instead of finding the hidden cave. His strength and speed, honed in Baymard's training barracks, allow him to mock their efforts. After leading them far from the boys' trail, Josh takes a moment to vanish. He coats himself in mud and creates misleading footprints to throw the pirates off, preparing to engage them in a tactical counterstrike. With lethal precision, Josh begins picking off the pirates one by one. The dense forest and the loud rain mask his movements, turning him into a phantom the pirates cannot grasp, causing panic to spread within their ranks. The cunning pirate leader, Crow Face, realizes they are being outplayed. He deduces the assassin's tactics and orders his men to stop chasing shadows, turning the search into an organized trap to flush out the rogue operative. Crow Face suspects the assassin is hiding nearby, hoping to pick them off. He turns the tables by stopping his men, forcing Josh to choose between retreating or fighting a group that is no longer distracted. Revealing his position, Josh intentionally speaks in English, the cryptic military language of Baymard. The pirates are left bewildered, unable to categorize his speech, leading them to fear he belongs to a far-off, unknown organization. Realizing that he needs to get on the pirate ships to rescue the kidnapped victims, Josh chooses to act exhausted, letting Fast Arms believe he has the upper hand. He engages in a fierce brawl, carefully orchestrating his defeat. While enduring the assault, Josh uses the moments of impact to carve coded messages into the nearby trees. His performance is flawless, convincing the pirates of his exhaustion while he leaves a trail for his comrades to find. The battle reaches a climax. Just as Fast Arms seems to overpower him, Josh strikes with a sudden, precise blow, blinding the pirate and turning the tide. He chooses the moment of impact to finally feign total defeat. Josh is captured, his body battered and muddy. Crowface interrogates him, but Josh channels his inner mummy book reader, weaving a tale of a secret society called the Eye of Horus and a hidden city of the dead. Josh's performance is impeccable. He taunts his captors, ensuring they believe he is a high-ranking operative from an ancient, dangerous civilization. The pirates, greedy for power and secrets, decide to keep him alive for interrogation at their headquarters. In the safety of the hidden cave, the boy finally wakes, his health improving. Mourning his uncle but fueled by a newfound resolve, he stares into the dark, vowing to save the mother he has never truly known, unaware of the war his survival has ignited.